We are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all the Week 17 action. To get started, we'll talk about the Christmas Day games, even though I'm a little bit late to those. And to be honest, going into it, I was not expecting that much from these games, given all of the context in the previous weeks leading up to it. And yet they still had the nerve to try to promote these games like they were going to be the greatest display of football imaginable. In reality, I can say that at least one of these games actually got to some form of competency, while the other two were just a naughty pair to even place anywhere near a national or global audience. But starting out with the Cowboys and Commanders here, this game, no matter how close it did end up getting, the first drive told you everything that you need to know about this. Hell, Javonte Williams trucking the dog shit out of Mike Sanderstill in just a few plays, barreling over him and just leaving his body completely laid out on the ground as he trucked up the middle for a few extra yards after that. That was the theme of this game from the Cowboys' perspective. They mentioned at several points how Washington had obviously been missing key guys, but most importantly, they lost Daron Payne for this game, and Dorrance Armstrong had been out for quite some time before this, leaving the very middle of that defensive line with the two tackles or maybe a nose tackle in specific formations just completely weakened at that point. Jerzon Newton in this game, second-year player, did get some good contributions in, but when it came to solely trying to stop the run, the Commanders had no chance of it whatsoever. Every single person who ran the ball, at least a good few times in this game, managed to make some kind of routine play and just explode forward for a productive enough game to keep them ahead of the sticks and keep on churning clock. It wasn't even just Javonte Williams. Malik Davis on this same drive would open up with a 21-yard run. And that dominance on the ground would open up the rest of the playbook for them, leaving Jake Ferguson to eventually get himself in the end zone with a little one-handed catch on a crossing pattern for a score here. I will say that it wasn't completely bad for the Commanders, but it got a whole lot worse before it could get better. This game got so incredibly bad that at a point, the score was 21-3, and they were down by as much as 18 after Kevontae Turpin literally burst wide open past the seam and over the middle of the field for essentially the longest touchdown run, or the longest scrimmage touchdown in Christmas Day history since, the NFL's had it around, from 86 yards out. No one was on him whatsoever. They completely lost him down the field. And I think, the broadcast team even made it a point to say, hey, Turpin in that point is essentially like a shooter in basketball. When they tell you about the shooter, you don't leave him unaccounted for. You do everything you can to game plan for him in that situation. How the hell are you the Commanders? I don't care where your defense is at, and that's how we know they're obviously not the greatest. But how the fuck do you leave that player with that kind of speed, that wide open, to just streak all the way across it, untouched and unguarded? That's damn near, that's fucking ridiculous. But we get to that point, and while the Commanders would have a quick response with Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt being able to find the end zone from 10 yards out, it would still be a 24-10 score at halftime. And after, they locked in for a few key stops here, it would be Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt to match the one-play magic and get himself a hell of a dash and run down the field for a 72-yard rushing score. All of a sudden, what looked like a complete and total blowout from the Cowboys' perspective was now a one-score game just like that. And they kept that going. The Cowboys kept imposing their will, but the defense for the Commanders, especially when we got into red zone situation, started to tighten up just a little bit. as they didn't really allow them to control the line of scrimmage as much, being able to keep them short, very short of manageable situations on third or fourth down, and ultimately forcing the Cowboys into a couple more field goals. While it was a one-score game, the Commanders would get a little bit of luck once they had Brandon Aubrey miss a 58-yard field goal after a 31-yard catch by Bryn Spanford to get them down the field in the first place. Again, these misses, we say it about Brandon Aubrey all the time. They're rare. And yet, for the Cowboys, man, I don't know, over the past few weeks, it's like, hey, you got to find a way to get around that. Because while Brandon Aubrey is certainly automatic, man, he is not, perfect all the time. You can't expect that. Fair enough. Great opportunity for the Commanders to get some kind of momentum back into this game. It was early in the fourth quarter. Even if you get a field goal, you settle for that on like a quicker drive, that's okay. You know that you've shortened the lead up, and that could go tremendous for your future prospects as far as this game goes. It was looking as though they could make something happen once they got Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt up the gut for a 9-yard gain against, Shavon Revel Jr., who, had some tackles in this game. He kind of struggled in run support. So he was able to get past him here. But, man, you get into a 3rd and 1 situation, and then they proceed to lose yardage and also pick up a false start penalty on a guy in Brandon Coleman who had gone out for a little bit of time in this game and had recently returned, only to get his, he struggled with that. He himself had to have been penalized a few good times in this game. And, that would be a situation where, okay, it definitely hurt the Commanders. The Cowboys, all they proceeded to do over the next few minutes was legitimately have it their way. They wanted to close the game out so badly that they proceeded to shed damn near 8 minutes off the clock, literally feeding everybody. Even Hunter Lepke, at different points, managed to get key gains on the ground, lining up as a halfback, knowing good and well he is a fullback. That still didn't matter because they were just attacking the full middle of that defensive line time and time again. That's what had been killing them all game long. And it was what was going to determine the outcome here. Ultimately, Brandon Aubrey would get himself a field goal to go, and they took a 10-point lead at that point. The Commanders tried to hang in there, but ultimately, it would not come to be the case because they would fail to get the onside kick after their field goal attempt at that point. Knowing that you need to stop, they still couldn't bring themselves to do it. George Pickens, for whatever reason, was being guarded by Frankie Louvu. And that went about how we expected. It was a good fake, though. Short yardage play. And there was a rollout off a boot. At that point, once he saw one defender bite on it, Prescott knew that it was probably going to be a money play. And that ended up being the case as the Cowboys eventually take that and close it out with a 30-23 victory. Man, what do you know, man? It's not like either of these teams are playing for much, but I guess the Cowboys had to make it a point to show them that they still own the Commanders. Very much so, I suppose. In this game, Dak Prescott had 307 yards and 2 touchdowns on 51.4% completion. Malik Davis actually led the way with 20 rushes for 103 yards, if you can believe that. And while Javonte Williams still contributed with a touchdown, the team as a whole had 211 yards on the ground on 4.8 yards per carry. Devontae Turpin had the lone 86-yard catch for a score. George Pickens had 4 receptions for 78 yards, and CeeDee Lamb had 5 receptions for 46 yards. As for the Commanders, honestly, Josh Johnson in relief starting this game. Yes, Josh Johnson was playing the game. He honestly did fine. Not enough to lose you the game on his own accord, but man, when they needed it the most, when they needed a drive, he's definitely not going to be the caliber of quarterback who can truly lead you to overcome those things in these situations. That's the thing. That's the thing with him, man. And he's been around for this long, and we can still say that that is the case. It's crazy, man. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt would have 11 rushes for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. Solid day for him. Deebo Samuel Sr. as well offered them some resistance at points. I mean, hell, the fact that he was able to streak all the way down the field on one of the first plays of their drives in this game. Literally taking it all the way down the field for a number of yards after the catch before taking Donovan Wilson's helmet off in a full contact collision that certainly got the Commanders crowd hyped up in that moment. I mean, you see constantly how Donovan Wilson is on the football field. And with his appearance alone, with some of the stuff that he has on, he is the one usually making those kinds of hits. And still, he got lit the fuck up by Deebo Samuel. That was just crazy to watch. But that effort would not prove to be enough, even with a total of 4 touches and 93 yards. Terry McLaurin had 5 receptions for 63 yards. And both Bobby Wagner and Will Harris had 10 tackles, while Bobby Wagner added a half a sack. Jerzon Newton, like I said, did come to play. He had 9 tackles and 3 sacks along with 2 TFLs. So that's pretty solid. But again, no cigar whatsoever. Then, oh man, oh boy. So, this Lions-Vikings game was, well, a game. Because, man, they could mention before game that Justin Jefferson was the fastest player to 8,000 receiving yards in the Super Bowl era. But, you wouldn't get any of that here. You wouldn't get any of that here. Because we know what's going on around this point. We figured that, things were going to take a bit of a rough turn with Max BROSMER being back there starting for the Vikings. It was easy to say. I'd been calling it the entire time. And as expected, the Lions defense honestly showed tremendous fight in this game. Especially given the situations that they constantly found themselves in. Literally. They held it down for as much as they possibly could. And you have to give them all the credit for that. They made life a living hell for them back there. And, the rushing game, for a while, when this game was actually in contention, was not effective for the Vikings at all. And that was going to be the key. They made that clear at several points. If BROSMER was going to be effective in this game, he needed a run game. He didn't have it in the Seattle game, and look what happened when he was asked to drop back the whole time. Right? Well, they got after him early and often, leading to legitimately one of the worst performances a quarterback could ever have, a team as a passing unit could ever have. Like, it's absurd to say, and I know it's been referenced already, but when you hear -3 fucking passing yards, -3, or well, 3 rather, net passing yards for a team, when you hear that shit, you would think that the opponent should have absolutely blown their asses out. And it felt like if you were a Lions fan in this one, honestly, you were just waiting for seemingly forever for the Lions to do what they do best. The defense had been weakened, but with the way that they were playing BROSMER and continuing to limit an offense that was already limited, you had more than enough opportunities to go out there and respond and start lighting up the scoreboard like the Lions do best. Hell, they had no excuse of, being outside in like inclement weather. They were in a dome stadium just as well, even if it was in Minnesota. So the opportunity was there. No question about it. But on the other end, the Vikings defense is just as good. And in a game that was marked somewhat by field position and honestly just ball security, the Vikings would absolutely get in the skin of every single Lions player, of every single Lions fan. And again, it all starts with how it seems to have been at multiple points in the season. Because the Packers, in the first matchup of the season for them, they were able to do it effectively and limit the Lions' offense. We saw it with the Steelers game that I covered last week, with how they limited their offense through the run. And the same thing happened here. I mean, they genuinely were not able to get the run game going at all. At all. Gibbs had another one of those days where, it was hard for him to get movement through the gaps at all. And you have to give the Vikings tremendous credit for that, especially when you look at the guys like Javon Hargrave, like Blake Cashman, like Jalen fucking Redmond. Man, they closed them shits up tightly. And as a result, everybody else was able to eat. You even had some of the cornerbacks, like Isaiah Rodgers Sr., like Byron Murphy Jr. getting in there for run support and stifling it over and over and over again. And it led them to force Jared Goff to drop back time and time again. And sure, from the standpoint of passing accuracy, 62.1% is relatively standard, but that does not tell the full story. There were situations where he couldn't even bear to get passes off because of just how tricky this entire dynamic with Harrison Smith has been for this team. There were situations where they full sent his ass on a blitz, and he was able to force pressure on his end that either led to a sack or led to a deflection. On one occasion, he leapt all the way up, even with him being at older age, and just batted a pass down, just because. Or you had situations where other linemen on the outside, I guess edge rusher technically, like Andrew Van Ginkel, continuing to make light work of an offensive line that was already depleted at this point. It was a recipe for complete and total disaster. Because as we've always said, when you put Jared Goff in a high-pressure situation, when you force him to drop back and you put the game in his hands with his, I guess, kind of decision, rather, made by the team to have him control the flow of the game, you are licking your chops every time. Because that's exactly what you want. You don't want the weapons around him to dictate a victory. You want him to play well above his standard, or attempt to, and make mistake after mistake after mistake. And ultimately, when you, as a team, get yourself in that situation, it can be too much to overcome. Andrew Van Ginkel literally starts it off, teeing off on Jared Goff, getting to him. We know he's immobile, so Andrew Van Ginkel is going to have a clear advantage there, and he was able to force a sack fumble on there and get them the ball right back, leading to what ended up being a very short touchdown drive. And for a while, that would be the only touchdown scored by the Vikings in this game. But the Lions still could not break through. They couldn't. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs as well just caught running backwards the entire time. And Eric Wilson, long-tenured vet with 2 stints with this Vikings team, now punched the ball right out of his hands, allowing Byron Murphy Jr. to get it, leading to yet another possession just wasted and stolen away. But the defense at every turn, they were doing their jobs, and granted, it was easy with the lack of talent on the offensive side for the Vikings spurring them. But you still got to go out there, you still got to handle your business, and Aiden Hutchinson and those boys were doing that. Yet still, even when the Lions were finally able to get something on the board, it took them 10 minutes to do so. And, that was for a number of different reasons. One, they had to bail themselves out of a 3rd and 16 early on after Andrew Van Ginkel sack. And luckily for them, Isaac Tesla has been such a reliable weapon in short spurts that he was able to move the chains here for a 28-yard gain. Amon-Ra St. Brown as well, I guess, over the course of this drive, would have a short milestone of his own. He'd have his 4th straight season with at least 100 catches. So as good as that is, you still have to try to go out and move down the field. Get something on the board at that point, especially if you're taking all that time up. Now, they got themselves in another 4th down situation, and at that point, they're near goal-to-go territory, so they go for it. Once more, the defensive effort from the Vikings damn near forces the goal line stand, if not for Isaac Tesla again, for the 2nd straight week in a row, literally getting in between multiple players here, taking a fucking beating in the back of the end zone, and still managing to muscle in the catch for a touchdown to tie up the game at that point. And we go into the half with a 7-7 tie, but man, given the way that the Lions had been playing with this lackluster approach, and already being in a situation where they had turned the ball over multiple times on their front while not even being able to force the Vikings into many mistakes at all, and that was kind of the thing as well that led to such a limited offense. You didn't want to provide too much overload because you saw what happened in that Seahawks game when you decided to give him way too much room to do anything he wanted. This game could have been even more out of hand for them. They were lucky to be in this position, but you know what? You get the score, you stop them ultimately, and you get the ball back to start the second half. No worries. They literally were so suffocated by this Vikings defense that at a point they could not get out of their own way. They could not. Now, this golf pass was just Byron Murphy Jr. would get the better of Jared Goff here, and again, this is off of pressure from Andrew Van Ginkel, so he just throws a very large duck of a pass over to Byron Murphy Jr., giving them another free possession, elite field position advantage, and a chance to go up, which they end up doing on a field goal drive, not even being able to really move the ball that much themselves, but ultimately succumbing to the will of Al-Quadin Muhammad and having Riker kick a 52-yard field goal. Man, where would they be without Will Riker? Seriously. But seriously, man, even in a situation where they had been doing that good of a job on the Vikings offense, they would follow that up and respond. They would pay it forward to this defense working their asses off to try to help them out by having 3 straight possessions end in turnovers. Harrison Smith would manage to be on the receiving end of an interception himself, and with that happening, Smith would not only get that done, but would become, another potential candidate if he gets another interception in the books, even closer to players who have logged 40 interceptions and 20 sacks in their career. The only other players to do that at this point, currently, as of the recording of this video, are Rondé Barber and Charles Woodson. Both of them Hall of Famers. Both of them Hall of Famers. So, man, Harrison Smith could put himself in a really great territory. And hell, with his presence in this game alone, you saw the impact that he's had on this team consistently, being a homer the entire time for his career. Now, first ballot, I mean, that could be debatable. Sure, we don't know that right now. But I would think that someday Harrison Smith is probably headed to Canton. Like, that's gotta happen. I mean, hell, that alone allowed other defenders to feed off of his work, as literally you would have after that drive, Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel get enough pressure on Jared Goff to damn near crush him completely in between two players, and ultimately Dallas Turner would rip it out with Jalen Redmond being at the center of yet another fumble recovery to give them the ball back. And the Vikings still couldn't do anything with it at all. At all. Finally, it looked as though the Lions were going to drive down the field and do something, anything, at this point. They needed it desperately, and yet they could not get past the 30-yard line on the Viking side, being forced to kick a field goal there. All you needed was one more defensive stop. But with you having all these short possessions and giving up such a short field time and time again to this defense, having to see the field over and over and over again for minutes on end, and a number of just repetitive actions here, they were going to get tired out at some point. And this play would sum it up perfectly. They got a first down stuff on Aaron Jones Sr., but you would have Jordan Addison proceed to take a reverse, essentially, all the way to the house, contorting his body near the line and getting it over the pylon for what would be a 65-yard touchdown run. That effectively gave Minnesota the 20-10 lead at that point in the game. But maybe in the Lions' case, they had another chance to shorten this to a one-possession game before the 2-minute warning, if they played their cards right. And still, even in that situation, who else but Andrew Van Ginkel forcing another turnover on Jared Goff, which would be a total of 5 for him on the day, and ultimately capitalizing off of that with a field goal. They didn't have to do much in this game, in what would be a 23-10 win. They didn't have to do much in this game at all, because the Lions, for better or for worse, man, they helped them out single-handedly with what they were not doing. That's ultimately what this game was about. Ultimately. For the numbers here, like for the Vikings even, again, the 3 net passing yards say it all. And even with the 158 team yards on the ground, a lot of that does not really factor in just how much work the Lions had to do. Honestly. Like, that 65-yard touchdown run was literally the straw that broke the camel's back. They were fighting tooth and nail to get these stops. And they were more successful than what the final output will display here. So, you can really take that with a little bit of salt. But it was all about the defense. I mean, all over the place. Where do you even start? How about Blake Cashman getting 17 tackles, a sack, and a TFL in this game? The defense as a whole combining for 5 sacks and 8 TFLs. Andrew Van Ginkel having 1.5 sacks and 5 tackles, along with Theo Jackson even getting a sack off a blitz for DBs. Like, everybody was on it. And they as a whole were able to force, a couple fumbles on their own. Like, some of these situations were literally just the Lions handing them free fumbles. But more often than not, whenever they tell you, hey, you got to call for the ball in a fumble situation, it seemed like every single time there was a Vikings defender in the area. And that kind of collaborative is ultimately what makes them such a threat on the defensive side. It's too bad that that will not lead to them being anywhere near the playoffs, but at the same time, the fact that your defense is the sole proprietor in ways of you being able to have a season that is pretty much at 500 as the recording of this video. Like, that is a miracle considering the lackluster quarterback play. And, some of the injuries that J.J. McCarthy had been dealing with, if he was set to be their guy. But as for the Lions, man, oh boy. 68 rushing yards on 2.3 yards per carry. Damn. At that point, that said it all. Between having that go down, between them missing a number of different fourth downs, and the fact as well that they had done so poorly in the third quarter of their last few ball games to lead to some of these losses. All of this just goes to show a season where they kind of lost their identity. I think it would be safe to say that. They lost their entire identity. And this game was the culmination of all of it. I mean, man, yes, it gets rougher when you have to lean all the way on Jared Goff to get the job done. But it goes so much further than that. It truly does. I know the Vikings defense is good, but there's still no way that you give up that kind of effort to them. There's no way that you get that sloppy with the ball. A Lions team that had been very protective of the football all season long is now uncharacteristically just handing them away to a defense that is known to get the most out of them whenever possible. At that point, you knew you were playing a dangerous game with this team. And then just some of the decision making as well also did them in. Yes, you live by the fourth down and you die by it. But man, when there were opportunities at other points throughout the entire season for points, even with an offense that still is one of the top 5 in terms of overall scoring, I believe, like, you still left so many on the board that probably could have changed the outcome of a few games here. Would have war, yes, the attrition was terrible as well, and it kind of has been over the past couple of seasons. It's always tough when you are losing that kind of talent on the defensive side of the football. Don't get me wrong. There's no question that there was going to be a bit of regression there, at least until some of those guys got back. But man, they failed to hold it down for the most part. They were just getting torched all over the place. And then, once they actually proceed to get a bit of a softer layup in this game, they do their job, they handle their business, and they still do not find a way to get over the hump and get the victory. It's all just, it's so tough for a team that, again, everybody's going to have that revisionist history and simply talk about them being in the NFC Championship game with a lead at halftime in 2023. It's kind of easy to do that, and I can see where they're coming from. Because, literally, you have taken a step back every season in terms of results. Yeah, they had the best record in franchise history last season, only for them to get first rounded essentially in the divisional round because they had the bye. And now the Lions, with this, are officially eliminated from the playoffs, having a far more talented team, and yet still being in a spot where they have the same record as this Viking squad exiting this game. That is crazy to consider. And, man, I suppose you can say in a way as well, hey, and I guess you're kind of seeing it, those coordinators, the loss of those coordinators, to the point where Dan Campbell had to take it upon himself and try to call his own plays. It might have been inevitable that they were going to lose them to head coaching jobs at some point, given how well they had performed. But man, the backup plans, the backup plans, were not so great for them this season. Ultimately. Man. Oh man. And then the Broncos and Chiefs. So, for some context here, they mentioned, that Bo Nix would be tied with Russell Wilson for the second most wins through a quarterback's first 2 seasons. And he was also the third quarterback in history to win 10-plus games and make the playoffs in their first couple of seasons as well, along with Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson. Still, though, even with that being the case, you could say that the Broncos have taken on the same streak of luck that the Chiefs did last year. Like, their margin of victory is so damn close. Legitimately. And they have such a good record in one-score games overall. I don't think anyone was expecting the game to turn into this, though. Like, the Broncos, even though they'll be in a situation where they may want to play down to their competition at times, there was no way, when they also did something of just absolutely historical proportions in a weird way. I will exclude the fact that Bo Nix got fucking lurked by Nick Bolton on one of these earlier drops. No question about that. It was good, though. I can't say fully lurked. I mean, this was a good play, honestly, from one of the cornerbacks from the Chiefs side. I can't even lie. I believe it was, Christian Fulton deflecting a pass that was attempted to a different Broncos wide receiver. He was almost out of bounds, but he tipped it right into an open space of the boundary, and Nick Bolton had to kind of kneel in and catch the ball damn near out of bounds, but getting his feet in at the right time to secure the catch and ultimately make the play. That's credit to the Chiefs side there. But even with the Chiefs defense still being really good, there's no reason why the Broncos should have had multiple drives in the first half that went about 8 minutes long. Both of them. Varying yardage, yes. And they also, on this other drive, ran 16 plays. So we're talking about a combination of 30 plays and essentially 135 yards down the field on these couple of drives here that lasted around 17 minutes in totality. And they proceeded to not come away with a single touchdown on either one of them. Matter of fact, they settled for field goals. Matter of fact, a Chiefs team being led by Chris Olonekon managed to have a 1-point lead against them at halftime. Because of the fact that interception gave the Chiefs a short field that still took them 5 minutes to move down and also ultimately have Olonekon get a solid pass to Brashard Smith out of the backfield for a score. Every single other Chiefs drive that took place here, especially from longer yardage, the Broncos defense was still doing what they needed to do. And what they should have been doing against it. They were limiting the run. Same rule here. If the Chiefs are going to have success in this one, they needed to hold that, run game in check and make sure they were getting that to go. And it didn't really happen at all for either of Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt in this game. But the Broncos had to be kicking themselves because it's literally like, how the fuck are you in that situation? How, man? And I mean, you got some gas to start off the second half as well. Like, you had a few plays here where Olonekon was literally just trying to do some Patrick Mahomes shit. Yes, he was sitting behind the man. But can you really explain him losing the ball as he's scrambling out to the side, picking up his own fumble, and then getting a close dot to Juju Smith-Schuster for a 12-yard gain? Can you really explain that shit? No, you can't. Yet still, the Broncos were able to overcome that and hold them to a field goal here. It took them a different 9-minute drive, but you know what? Finally, the Broncos took it upon themselves to say, hey, let's first of all sort out this Courtland Sutton shit. Man, there were way too many times for a receiver as good as Courtland Sutton is in this game early on where he just dropped some of the most inexplicable passes. Like, some of these were right in hand. And he'd come down with those catches 9 times out of 10. Yet every single one of those damn times, the reverse was happening, which made no sense and ultimately put an early end to some of these Broncos drives. Unfortunately, I really couldn't explain that. But he converted a few here, and once that happened, everything else was opened up. They didn't put a spy on Bo Nix at all in this play, and he proceeded to do what he does best and scramble out of the pocket to get himself in the end zone for a 9-yard touchdown run. As the Chiefs just continue at times to weirdly hang into this game, Brashard Smith would damn near give them a massive boost by getting this deep-ass punt return here, giving them another short field, and having the Chiefs tie up the game with a quick response from Harrison Butker as well. But the Broncos decided to get on that bully ball control comment, moving down the field for 6 minutes long, essentially, picking up some vital third downs, and also, as we got right out of the 2-minute warning after a few passes here, keeping them relatively short, came down to 4th down. And, the Broncos had a decision to make. They could get a touchdown out of this. They could kick the field goal to go up front. And let's just say that it was made all the easier for them once Chris Jones decided, after literally talking about staying disciplined on defense earlier in the pregame before it even started, with the sideline reporter, he said that out his own mouth and proceeded to, on this down, commit a neutral zone infraction penalty, giving the Broncos an automatic first down and allowing them to score, in a matter of 10 seconds, while the Chiefs at that point had to waste a couple of their timeouts just to try to save some more time on the clock and make something happen on their side of the ball. Craziness, man. Yet the Chiefs were actually driving just a little bit. Travis Kelce hadn't really been heard from much in this game, but he proceeded to open the drive up, getting a couple of massive gains down the field before ultimately finding themselves as a collective near the Broncos' red zone in a matter of less than a full, 2 minutes. They had a fair amount of seconds left in this game, and, they got 3rd and 3 on the Broncos' 21-yard line at that point. They looked like they had a chance until a delay of game penalty was taken here. And I will say that a couple of these passes had a chance. But Khan is definitely not Mahomes in that regard. And he missed both of them brutally. I will say the Marquise Brown one had more of an opportunity to be converted, but it would not prove to be enough. And although this was close, the Broncos would win 20-13. And again, it's like, Denver. Like there's just no way that this game should have been that close, bro. Against a team that is absolutely depleted. You managed to keep this one close. Like, yes, I understand you don't want to put all your plays out there. You don't want to exhaust all your energy in this situation. But come on, man. Come on. How are people supposed to take that seriously? I'm not exactly sure. Literally. Just think about this for a second. This game would be the first time for the Broncos since 1999 where they had multiple 8+ minute drives not ending in a touchdown. And that shit happened in the first half alone. It's like you cannot make that up. But they got it done anyways. I guess a win is a win. Alright. Bo Nix had 182 yards and a touchdown and an interception on 68.4% completion. The Broncos as a whole ran for 128 yards on the ground and a touchdown from Bo Nix, as I mentioned. Cortland Sutton also added 4 receptions for 40 yards. As for the Chiefs, Khan had 66 yards passing on 59.1% completion. And a touchdown pass. So yeah, the Broncos did their job defensively. It's like, man. The Chiefs as a whole ran for 82 yards, which would not prove to be enough in this one either. But the Chiefs defense, at least for a while in this one, came to play. Nick Bolton and Shamari Connor both had over 10 tackles, while Nick Bolton also added the interception and a pass deflection, and Shamari Connor added 7 solo tackles on this night. Man, oh my goodness, bro. Alright. Moving on to Ravens and Packers on Saturday night in Lambeau. Man, this one was just, somewhat expected, and at the same time, with a play of the backups, you're leaving this game just absolutely confused at what you witnessed. Because, yes, Derrick Henry did what Derrick Henry was expected to do in this situation. The first drive, in the same way as the Cowboys-Commanders game, set the tone for how this one was going to go, especially with the news that Lamar Jackson was not going to suit up in this game. They ran the hell out of the ball with him, as they typically should, because you have to trust a man who has constantly been that efficient on the ground and that powerful of a unit on the ground. And what did they do? They gave him about 8 rushes on that drive, or something like that alone, ultimately barreling in for a touchdown run that would make history for him, giving him a spot at 10th all-time in career rushing yards, and just continuing to climb up the ladder in terms of career rushing touchdowns as well, ultimately giving the Ravens a lead to start out the game that they would promptly piss away in a matter of less than a full minute and a half, because Nate Wiggins got completely torched by Romeo Doubs down the field automatically before you would have Christian Watson go completely unguarded, even with Kyle Hamilton covering him for a split second. I was thinking that there was supposed to be a switch as they continue to replay it between him and Roquan Smith accounting for Christian Watson, but it's still Christian Watson, and he's going to burn completely past the both of them. So maybe the whole play, the entire coverage was busted anyways. Regardless, Christian Watson moved right into the area and completely exploited it for a 39-yard touchdown catch on an absolute rope, I might add, from Malik Willis to tie the game instantly. And this kind of stuff continued throughout the rest of the game. Tyler Huntley himself did not pitch a bad one at all. They asked him to get the ball out quick, and, you're definitely compensating at this point, just like the Packers are again still trying to bring the blitz home in blitz's face-off because you don't have Micah Parsons engineering that natural pressure on that end. Ultimately, though, when Derrick Henry is that much of a force, you continue to feed him. It was just straight up anything you can think of. The inside zones, the blast plays, whatever variant of run you are looking for, the Ravens ran it to absolute perfection, trusting Derrick Henry against literally anybody else. And Xavier McKinney at a point was so pissed about it because he kept on being at the receiving end of having to make multiple tackles down low just to make sure he wasn't getting trucked or stiff-armed by the man on the night. Man, I can't blame him for that. It's like, dude, that is a hard task for anybody. But the Ravens would go up 14-7 once Derrick Henry himself would get yet another touchdown run to start out the game. And hey, man, look, bro. Oh, man. I swear to you, this is the interesting thing about the Packers. Yes, Malik Willis would pick it up eventually, but for a while when it came to actually utilizing their running backs, they just didn't. Was there something... I still have to question if there was something that we just didn't know about their situation. The fact that Josh Jacobs was barely utilized in this game at all might need some investigating. Seriously. The Packers to this point, and, it would proceed to be that way throughout the rest of the half, man, they were getting bullied in time of possession. And one of the better ways to counter that is to try to impose your will in the run game. Ravens defense is weakened, especially with Matabike again continuing to be out for the season with an injury. They don't have that kind of reinforcement there, although Travis Jones is a solid player up front. There was no reason why you just completely abandoned that. And it promptly led to them turning the ball over on downs here, allowing yet another field goal to the Ravens, and then just having one of the weirdest things happen imaginable. Which also just goes to show, I guess, in a way, maybe why they do not trust the run game in this situation. Because, Elton Jenkins, with his versatility still being out at this point, has definitely forced a step back for this entire Green Bay team. Dude. I just don't know how to explain this. Now, yes, they're going to look at the fact that this ball hit Malik Willis straight in the face, and he turned away and tried to locate it in quite the hilarious manner. They're going to look at that and try to clown him for it. This is more so on Sean Ryan, the new guy that they have at center at this point, who has never lined up in that position before. And we've seen just how drastic that's been over the past couple of games for them. This is the same man responsible for the mishandled snap in the game against the Commanders, literally the week before. And now we have yet another situation where you're throwing that shit up that high to where Malik Willis can't even field it. He wasn't even ready for the ball in that situation, and you just choose to go for some reason. And that damn near put the Packers in a deeper hole as well. If only, not for the pressure provided by Lucas Van Ness here, man, they would have completely blown this out of the water. But fortunately for them, the Ravens were forced into another field goal situation. I suppose, feeling a little bit of the pressure, they turned to Malik Willis to make his own plays and sling the rock. And surprisingly, he fucking made this shit happen. Not only would he sling the ball all over the yard, but he would be the de facto leading man as a runner out of the backfield. Because the Ravens, for whatever reason, would proceed to not put a spy on him, knowing that that is his strength, running the football. coming into this game. But even then, oh man. Like, man, I don't know how to explain some of the stuff I was seeing from Malik Willis here. Like, what in the fuck? I mean, he takes this option, and I was saying the whole time, if Trenton Simpson for the Ravens as a linebacker is better in run support and is known to be fast, that's one of his core strengths, right? Put him as a spa on Malik Willis and see what happens. He was there. He was supposed to be watching Willis on this play, and he just decided to account for the running back. Literally, as soon as he crept inside, Malik Willis just took that shit straight to the house. He was gone. No doubt about it. Ultimately, bringing them down to, within a score. But the Ravens had a 2-minute offensive plan of their own, getting Tyler Huntley out in space on essentially a QB draw, having everybody backed up, trying to cover things over the top and across the field, and it gave him enough room to just completely run free for a 25-yard gain. Then, in no time, they got down to the goal line with what would be seen as an unnecessary roughness penalty. Derrick Henry would get his third touchdown of just the first half, an early fucking hat trick, banging it in the end zone down low and giving the Ravens a 27-14 lead at halftime. But I guess we've seen it all from Baltimore this season, and I guess fans weren't necessarily content with that. You had to close, especially with the season being on the line at this point, knowing that you'd need to win out for the best chance possible to still win the AFC North at this point. I mean, they held strong. They were looking like they were going to slip because Nate Wiggins still cannot guard people man to man. They mentioned how he was one of the worst graded PFF players at the cornerback position across the entire season. But even without having that knowledge, just seeing a few Ravens games and watching Nate Wiggins work, man, it's not looking too good. Ultimately, they would still overcome that and force the Packers into a field goal. The Ravens, for a second, hit a brief lapse once they decided to send multiple bodies Derrick Henry's way. And what do you know? Kingsley Enagbare was able to flip him over in the backfield, force a 5-yard loss, and get the Ravens behind the sticks, behind schedule, get the Packers the ball back, and have them drive down the field with Malik Willis just continuing to do whatever the hell he wanted to this defense. For a time in this game, he had been perfect on his passes, and he was legitimately cloning Lamar Jackson with what he was doing out there at that point. You know it's bad from Nate Wiggins' perspective when Bo Melton, of all guys, Bo Melton, can streak down the field, get a fucking beauty hauled in from Malik Willis, and get right past him for a 34-yard gain. Bo Melton did that to Nate Wiggins. That tells you a lot. And Malik Willis would once again, utilize his elusiveness out of the backfield to get an 11-yard touchdown run and give them a 3-point deficit to work with. Now, things are looking scary for the Ravens. Same shit had happened last week. They needed to find a way to hold on, or otherwise their season was a complete and total wrap. And with that in mind, with something that they should have been doing all year long in these situations, in Derrick Henry, they finally trusted. Now the key was actually playing him in the fourth quarter. It was the most important step, to play him. And once they did, well, the rest was history for this one. Any number of things you wanted him to pull off, he did. He damn near took one to the house, if not for Edgerrin Cooper getting a shoestring tackle on him. He bullied the shit out of Carrington Valentine, eventually, on one of his later runs, literally moving him 5 yards away from him by himself. They started to switch it up a little bit, allowing Keaton Mitchell to get a few runs in here and there, and Tyler Huntley, on what was actually a solid route run by Zay Flowers, would get himself a touchdown pass from 10 yards out to give the Ravens a 10-point lead. This could have been a continuous back and forth bout, if not for the fact that Malik Willis would tweak some part of his body on this sequence during this drive. Because when they got in the Ravens territory, deeper in there, you saw Malik Willis go out. Now, it's crazy to consider that he had this great of a game, knowing that he was dealing with a shoulder injury before this and was also slated to potentially be doubtful for this one. Yet they called him up, and he did nothing short of spur this team to a potential victory, put this entire squad on his back, literally, as they, go through this entire situation. They mentioned that Willis was the first Packers quarterback since Don Majkowski in 1990 to have at least 285 passing yards and 60-plus rushing yards in a single game. And he was efficient as fuck. Completed something like 88% of his passes at that point of time. Was absolutely lighting shit up. And, you're riding that kind of momentum. You want it to continue. But naturally, you have to switch it up somehow. You've got to get a different quarterback in, knowing that Jordan Love had already been out, and now knowing that Malik Willis is being tended to. Insert Clayton Tune. Yeah. Oh, last 3 words before absolute disaster for the Packers. He literally proceeded to, in a matter of a couple plays, throw one right over to Marlon Humphrey. Yeah. Damn. Now, again, it might not be on him wholly. Melton tipped it up his way, and it led to Marlon being able to get it. But that's just a really bad sign. And ultimately, when that ended up being the case, it would be Derrick Henry barreling ahead over to the left side of the field for a 25-yard touchdown run to cap off the game, get his 4th touchdown of the night, and give the Ravens a much-needed victory against this team with a 41-24 result. But man, hey, bro. This was actually a surprisingly good game. It was actually a surprisingly good game for a while. I like this. That's the essence of the Christmas holiday, I suppose. You might not always be expecting what you're going to get, but hey, man, sometimes there are going to be situations where those kinds of things just happen naturally, unexpectedly, and it can truly make a full day for a person in that moment, I suppose. So I guess this was a late Christmas present for the Baltimore squad. Tyler Huntley, like I said, he did not play that bad. Had 107 yards passing on 80% completion with a touchdown pass. But it was all about Derrick Henry, boy. 36 rushes for 216 yards flat in 4 touchdown runs on a perfect 6 yards per carry. With that performance alone, he would give himself the 4th most rushing touchdowns in NFL history, on top of now being 10th all-time in rushing yards, and also breaking the 3-way tie between Adrian Peterson and O.J. Simpson for the 7th instance of a 200-yard rushing game, his NFL career. Like that man, he's Canton made, bro. There's no doubt about that shit. And the Ravens team as a whole, that was their identity. They wanted to get it done on the ground. And man, 53 rushes rather, for 307 yards. Yeah, it's safe to say they dominated the line of scrimmage. Had to against this team. Literally held on to the ball for 40 minutes compared to the Packers with a little less than 20. There was no doubt about it once that came into play. But it wasn't without effort, especially from Malik Willis's perspective. I mean, he was the leading rusher and had a total of 348 yards along with 3 total touchdowns to rushing on 85.7% completion without a single turnover, man. It was like, damn. I mean, literally doing some of the same stuff Lamar Jackson would be doing in this situation. It was crazy to watch. And it sucks that the Packers waste that because of just outside of that, not even really sticking true to their roots. All of the actual running backs between Emmanuel Wilson and Josh Jacobs in this game combined for just 7 total rushes and 19 total yards. In what universe do they think that was okay? Especially going up against a team that was hell-bent on feeding one man the whole night. You didn't last a chance if that's how you were going to approach this game. Christian Watson had 5 receptions for 113 yards and a touchdown, and Romeo Doubs had 3 receptions for 62 yards and a score. But hey, I suppose Xavier McKinney, Quay Walker, and Edgerrin Cooper all had over 10 tackles in this game. Jeez. So the Packers, they would, with the Vikings win against the Lions, be given a playoff berth. But they would lose a chance at being able to win their division with the result of this game against the Ravens. Meanwhile, the Ravens, as, things were still unfolding, they were still alive. They were still very much alive in the race for the AFC North title, as that would be their only way to get into the playoffs at that point. But it would all come down to the result of this game right here that I would watch live in the Browns and the Steelers. Now, this could literally be defined as a trap game for Pittsburgh in this situation. They mentioned at multiple points that the Steelers had won one time in Cleveland since 2017. Just one time. Even with the Browns being so fucking shitty, they've continued to be a thorn in the Steelers' side. And that would get off to a pretty interesting path to start the game. Now, they mentioned that it was going to be just as windy there. There was some inclement weather. So it was going to be a bit of an ugly game. But I don't think anybody could have anticipated the start that the Browns got to this. Not only did they come out getting a field goal and having Shedeur Sanders work the ball down the field to get them on the board first, but they also would proceed to, on the next drive, get a deep shot to Tillman for a 42-yard gain, and then have one of the weirdest and most deceptive passes take place. Because Sanders is chucking this shit over to Harold Fannin Jr., okay? And it looks like it's supposed to go all the way to the right pylon of the end zone. It looks, as they replay it, to be a bit of a wobbler, showing that the wind absolutely caught that ball in that situation. It was actively altering the trajectory of the throw. And still, Harold Fannin Jr. was able to locate it somehow, adjust his body, get proper positioning, and reel it in, roll into the end zone untouched, and score. People are going to come at Kyle Duggar for that, I suppose, for allowing it. But at the same time, I think he was expecting the same thing. And, man, Mother Nature sometimes will win out in those cases. So, I mean, there's not much that Kyle Duggar really could have done if he was expecting that result and just got completely played out of his thoughts. Absolutely wild. Absolutely. But nonetheless, Browns at that point, 10-0 lead in just the first quarter. Ravens fans were definitely excited about it, as the Steelers would have to lose this game in order for the Ravens to still have a chance. It was looking. The hate watch, I think I saw one thing that was being consumed talking about the hope watch for the Ravens. Everybody was all on that. They were all excited to see it. And then this game just got incredibly weird over time. Incredibly weird. Oh, man. You really saw just how terrible it was for the Steelers without DK motherfucking Metcalf. Look, they got some good work on this drive, literally running the fake version of the Spartan play that they had recently come up with for Connor Hayward to get all the way down the field and get into Cleveland territory. But even when they got in the red zone, they figured that the strength was going to be the running backs, and they clamped down the running backs. They were not allowing the screen plays for Kenneth Gainwell in this situation at all, and ultimately forced Chris Boswell into kicking a field goal, with him historically struggling from 40-plus in the Cleveland Browns stadium over the past few years, ironically enough. Everything else after that was just typical for the Browns. They do what they do, even when they somehow showcase a little bit of hope. They literally pummel right back down to reality every single time. Every single time. Like, not much happened for them. Not much happened for them. I mean, just think about this. You have the advantage on them early on like that, and then proceed to, for pretty much every single drive after that, up until the late fourth quarter, not even do anything. Multiple turnovers, multiple 3-and-outs, and just some untimely plays, man. Time and time again. Between having Shedeur Sanders get absolutely pressured by Herbig and Highsmith and those guys over and over again, including also with one of those interceptions, getting tipped all the way up and over to Jack Sawyer, the Ohio State man. I'm not mad at that whatsoever. But that's got to be infuriating as a Browns fan to deal with for essentially the rest of the game to that point. But at that point, what exactly could be considered worse? Because even with forcing that to happen, the Steelers would also proceed to not make their own moves. Now, it did hurt them a little bit that one of their, emerging weapons in Darnell Washington would go down with an injury. He would then later be ruled out. And as I just saw on an NFL.com article, he is now getting surgery on that forearm. So hopefully for them, he may be able to return. But as for the rest of this game, it went all downhill for their passing offense from there. They really thought that Marquez Valdez-Scantling, yes, that Marquez Valdez-Scantling could get the job done for them on the outside, and he proceeded to, at multiple points, not really have that kind of synchronicity with Aaron Rodgers that you would expect with them being former teammates in fucking Green Bay. Dropping multiple passes, getting completely clamped up on different routes. And literally at a time, one of their more reliable wide receivers actually ended up being Scotty fucking Miller. Yet through it all, the Steelers were within a score at halftime. But man, just a whole lot of missed opportunities to take advantage. Mark this up. And then we get into the just ugliness that was the fourth quarter in a way. You have to credit the Browns defense between Myles Garrett, of course, who, while he was not getting a lot of pressure. He was able to pick it up in the fourth quarter. But you've got to see the way that they were guarding this man. And I guess that was kind of the strategy. They kept alluding to the fact that, they were so hell-bent on not trying to get Myles Garrett the record-breaking sack. Like, I shit you not. On pretty much every single play for most of this game, Myles Garrett was legitimately spaced all the way out in a three-point stance, near where the receivers are in these situations. He's spaced all the way out from the other three defensive linemen. And you want to know what the Steelers still proceed to do? They funnel a load of different linemen, a load of different tight ends, and a load of different running backs just to keep Myles Garrett away from Aaron Rodgers. They were selling out for the shit at that point. And I get it. That didn't still keep Aaron Rodgers completely protected. You had Grant Delpit damn near force a sack fumble on him. You had Michael Hall Jr. get some pressure on him and also get a good TFL at a point. And you had one of their other defensive tackles in Wright also managed to make a few plays in the backfield. So it wasn't even really that effective at a point, especially if you're not going to be able to move all the way down the field and do much anyways. And yet they didn't relent from it. But we got into the fourth quarter, and they got a solid drive to go. Yet, you want to score a touchdown if you are taking 8 minutes off the clock. And we just got off of talking about that with the Broncos, right? But, maybe the Steelers learned their lesson. This is still a much closer bout at this point. I don't know. Maybe they can do something with that. And Chris Boswell missed a 54-yard field goal. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit, man. Our most reliable dude. Our most reliable guy on the team. Missing a field goal in this climate? It might be a wrap. You're thinking. Only the Steelers defense would continue to show up with Kyle Duggar managing to make a play on what was just a very awkward looking ball. Shedeur Sanders was being pressured in this situation. And he was trying to throw it out of bounds. I think even his face said it all. Deion Sanders was in the suite again, having his little cowboy hat over his face, just pounding it against him at the despair of what he just witnessed, right? I don't, there's not much you can do about that. Same thing. Maybe he didn't get enough strength on the ball. He was, just backing all the way up, I will say. So that might not have helped him out, and then you have to factor in the wind as well. So that could be a little bit difficult. Nevertheless, the Steelers got the play and still would not do anything for the next couple of drives. Luckily for them, again, the Browns were just as inept. And I guess ineptness to an extent, as far as this game went, was much better than what the Steelers were doing on their front. Anemic does not do it justice. Truly. And when you hear about this drive right here, this is where I think, depending on how things go, this is where I think the Steelers season will truly be defined. Because I'm going to say this right now, and I understand that Mike Tomlin is an accomplished head coach. I understand what he's been able to do for the team, and I understand that he's now working on his 19th consecutive non-losing season. But at a point, man, as the discourse has kind of been, man, some of these decisions as of late are what separate him from being a leader of a mediocre team, from him being a leader of a true championship contender, a legitimate force to be feared in the National Football League. And we can't say that about the Steelers over the last few years, especially when we have shit like this happening. I know Aaron Rodgers at a time in his career was a bad man, but you have to be an absolute fucking idiot, okay? Because that is exactly the situation we are in, where you go 3 straight incomplete passes with Aaron Rodgers in this situation. And this drop is taking place before the 2-minute warning. Keep that in mind. But you have all three of your timeouts. Your defense had been playing that well on the Browns since you spotted them 10 points early in the first quarter. You don't typically go against in this situation, trusting them again, maybe utilizing the rest of your timeouts on that drive, pinning the Browns back deeper, and then trying to get the ball back with, a chance at least. A chance to get a lead at the end of the game and win it completely. That's what would normally happen in this situation. So, why in the fuck did Mike Tomlin think it was a good idea to go for it in his own territory at his own 20-yard line near the red zone with a drop back for Aaron Rodgers in that situation? Even if I want to go out and throw out the fact that Aaron Rodgers is a 42-year-old man, that still doesn't excuse your decision making at that point of time, Mike Tomlin. All you got to do is punt the ball away. Do what the game is calling for you to do. It had been a field position game the entire time. Why then would you serve up a short field or give the Browns a chance to serve themselves up a short field in the event of a stop by trusting an offense that had not done anything in drives? Matter of fact, they had to pick up the full 4th and 10 here. And just think about this for a second. On most of their last few drives in the game, they had not even moved the ball 10 yards on any one of their, not any one of their drives, but a good number of their last few drives in this game. And you are trusting them now with the game on the line, with the potential division title on the line, all of a sudden, to go for it on 4th and 10 on your own side of the field. It is absolutely idiotic to have that happen. And promptly, the Browns got to stop, and promptly, even with you not really allowing the Browns to stay out on the field long in terms of game time, you use all your timeouts as you would have if you pin them back deeper on their own side of the field to have them do the same thing. It's not like they were just going to magically be aggressive in that situation, because that would have been real sabotage. If they want to keep on saying, Stefanski is trying to sabotage Sanders' career, that would have really been it if they would have allowed him to try to go for a score in that situation. But promptly, they wanted to keep it out of harm's way at that point. They'd worked too damn hard. And so they ran the ball strategically, conservatively, not aggressively at all. But the key difference is that in a game marked by field position, not only did you give them a chance to put the game away, but you allowed them an opportunity to, without much resistance at all, extend the fucking lead to a full touchdown. Meaning that you now had to, if you were the Steelers in this situation, go into overtime with a team that you had been struggling to beat over the past 9 years, or go for a 2-point conversion to win the game if you were able to drive all the way back down the field. Do you see how much of a terrible decision that is in that moment? Questionable the second it fucking happened. And everything else after that went about as expected. Because what the Steelers would proceed to do is work down the field. They got down there instantly, with the fact that, for whatever reason, they weren't watching Pat Freiermuth too intently over the middle of the field. But they actually got in goal-to-goal territory with 29 seconds left or so around that margin, with a 2nd and goal from the 7-yard line after a pass completed to Adam Thielen that sent him out of bounds. Went about as well as they could have expected. And yet, it still had a chance of not even leading to much of anything. Because your highest percentage play in that situation would be to tie the game. Or risk losing it all by going for 2 if you scored. Yet, neither would happen for the Steelers here, as they would proceed to just think about this. Just think about this for a second. Because even if DK Metcalf was in the game in this situation, this is fucking insane, by the way. They attack or choose to have Aaron Rodgers because you got to go for shots, I suppose. They are going to want to keep everything behind them. Maybe you had at least another short pass out of bounds, but you don't have that kind of space to work with. Shots are going to be your best bet. Yet, you are trusting a man in Marquez Valdes-Scantling who can't catch the fucking ball. You are trusting him to come down with a potential game-tying touchdown catch, or at least one that puts you in position to then try to take a lead. You trust him in that situation to be a clutch man, a clutch wide receiver, when you have Denzel Ward lining up against him and you go at him 3 straight times. I don't care if this was Denzel Ward's return from a calf injury over the past few games. This is still fucking Denzel Ward. Do you know what they call him? They call him the fucking warden for a reason, because he locks shit down. And you are trusting a receiver who cannot catch the ball against a shutdown corner. And what proceeds to happen over the next 3 plays? Overshoot, incomplete contested catch with Ward all up in Marquez Valdes-Scantling's chest. And then, yet again, on 4th down, all up in Marquez Valdes-Scantling's chest. And forcing a fucking incomplete pass to end the game. And yet, ironically, in that situation, you would probably have more time to think it over. You'd probably have more time to not rush these plays, and you'd probably be able to center yourself a little bit, maybe scheme up something to a different person if you had fucking timeouts in your back, or you had more time to work with punting the fucking ball in the first place and having a far easier field to work with than having to drive all the way from your own 35-yard line just to tie up the ball game. Rather than go out and win it all, removing an opportunity to get a free field goal from the board. So that's how this ended up going. The entire season for the Steelers, to think about this, they started off well, so well, hit a slump, got all, seemingly back on track, just for them to now be in a spot where by not punting the fucking ball on 4th and 10, they will fuck around and they will single-handedly allow a Ravens team that could have mathematically been out of there if they would have won the game. Now it sets up a win-or-go-home situation on Sunday Night Football next Sunday. With the season on the line, with the division on the line. Because of incomprehensible decision making. Maybe the Browns would have won that game regardless, and they did, 13-6. But there's no excusing that. And it's tough to say that about a person in Mike Tomlin who is that good of a head coach. I genuinely don't know how to explain that all these days later on. It's crazy. And I can tell you right now, if that's how I'm viewing the situation, you can just imagine how hardcore Steelers fans are viewing that fucking situation. Like, why is it always something? Why? You have a shot at this thing. You have it in the bag, and you do everything in your power to focus more so on not giving up a measly sack than going out and playing to fucking win the game. By putting yourself in the best possible scenario to win the game. Like, what the fuck are we doing? That makes absolutely no sense to me. The numbers aren't even really worth much in this situation. Well, what I can say for the Browns is that, I mean, hey, over the past few games, man, they have truly been competing. I don't know if they go out and they win this game with Dillon Gabriel at the helm. Like, Shedeur Sanders has clearly shown you some things. There are obviously a number of things that he needs to improve on in time. But, man, given what he's dealing with, he's not possessing much of a run game right now. Dylan Sampson did return, but none of the runners in this game were really that effective at all. And so they had Sanders drop back constantly. And, the interceptions are rough, but ultimately, you were still able to overcome them to win the game and haul out a gritty one. So, that's definitely solid from their perspective. It's not going to end up in being a real productive season for the Browns, but, they can build towards something. They can build from this. So that's the main takeaway there. Man, I genuinely cannot believe what I witnessed there. And that, ironically enough, leads into this game between the Bills versus the Eagles. Oh, man. Oh, man. There are a good number of Bills and Eagles fans within a set radius. They are not going to be happy. I don't think either team can really be content with the way that this one ended up panning out. And I think this kind of sums it up the best. It's like, the Bills are still just struggling to find, outside threats. Truly struggling. To the point where they had to activate Brandon Cooks off the practice squad and have also just re-signed Mecole Hardman Jr. after waiving him, by the way, to knock that one out. They want to have Keon Coleman doing this, and he is still a healthy scratch. So that is just a different situation unto itself, and maybe they may need to reconsider that, because that's terrible to be in that spot. But regardless, I don't know. The few times that they were able to get downfield, even they came with just complete luck. They had this heave to Brandon Cooks for a 50-yard gain. They had a different heave to Tyrell Shavers that was barely hauled in to get them into, goal-to-go territory later on in the game. And then further on in the game after that, they had Brandon Cooks get up for a similar catch to Shavers, having to literally beat it touching the ground just to home it in after going up top. None of them really came too clean. And it had not been a part of their offense all season long, really. Like, they've been more predicated on running the ball, imposing their will there, and getting themselves in situations of high leverage on third and short, third and manageable, to continue to move their way forward and put the defense on ice. They, for a while in this game, the Bills, man, they, against this Eagles defense, that would not come easy. That would not come easy at all. I mean, you already had Jameis Hunt getting after Josh Allen on one of the first drives, and then this situation would just make things even worse. Because it's not like the Eagles had an immediate response up their belt. But they had the nerve to try to call this an incomplete pass because of the fucking tuck rule, is Blandino was talking about. They tried to be sneaky with that, but when you look at this play, Josh Allen definitely scrambled all the way to the right, and he lost control of the fucking ball as Jalen Phillips was pressuring him. It bounced all the way back behind the line of scrimmage, I suppose, and you had Jahad Campbell, the rookie from Alabama, recover it to give the Eagles a short field and allow the Eagles in that moment, with passing and a blend of a little bit of rushing, to get inside the goal to go territory, with Dallas Goedert getting another red zone touchdown and making this a 7-0 lead. In fact, the Eagles had a 13-0 advantage at halftime. They tried to impose their will in the run, and James Cook III was able to get himself some, good work in this game. Josh Allen was also able to, at times, utilize his ability to run as a weapon. And, they continued to reference the fact that he had slightly tweaked a lower region of his body last week. I think they mentioned his foot, and that left him hindered somewhat in being able to impose his will in the run. And that could be the case to an extent, but at the same time, I am not willing to use that as a fucking excuse. Especially with some of what he was still able to do out there. There's just no way for that. And that doesn't compensate for the entire offense being a complete and total no-show. A complete and total no-show. I mean, receivers were definitely getting locked up by corners. The front seven was flying all over the place. Zach Bond, man, is just continuing to be an absolute fucking unit. And not to mention, Jalen Carter was back. Jalen Carter was back and just playing bully ball. Like, bruh, there is a situation. He gets right past fucking Osiris Torres, pushes him out the way, and then just slams Josh Allen right down to the ground. And that is an element in the Eagles defense that had been missing somewhat, and they'd still been playing well over the past few weeks. So you could imagine how much stronger that element was when you have that kind of pass rush on the outside, now adding Jalen Phillips in, along with that interior fucking dominance that they already possess, with solely Jordan Davis having himself a hell of a fucking year and adding Jalen Carter back to the mix. It was a recipe for fucking disaster. Absolute disaster on that front. And it was looking that way for a while. It was getting scary. It was getting scary for that Bills Mafia, man. You had people booing and everything. It was not looking pretty. And this game wasn't meant to be that way. I mean, there was rainfall all over the place. I guess maybe had a chance to become snow in, certain conditions. But it was pouring, man. And, like they said on the broadcast, it's almost like you needed full-on goggles just to work your way through this. It was that wet. Josh Allen, ironically enough, was talking about how he liked to, have slicker footballs in this situation. And dude proceeds to just piss away a fumble just because. So that I found that pretty ironic as well. And I mean, hey, even with the Bills, not showing up in the first half at all, it's not like they haven't been in this position before. And it's not like, as Tom Brady would like to remind you, they haven't done this before already. They have them exactly where they want them because they're the best second half team in the league. And, this is only a 2-possession ball game. Technically, they are not too far out of this thing. They genuinely weren't, though, in reality. 13 points ain't much of a difference. But when you're getting completely suffocated like that, it can be hard to overcome. Especially when you consider just how close they got. I mean, the Bills, between them starting to stymie Saquon Barkley and also having guys like Christian Benford continue to get in, solid defensive effort from them. Although on one specific play in the second half, there was a situation where I personally thought that Devontae Smith caught the ball, yet I guess they wanted to show a little pity party to the Bills. They overturned it. I don't know where the hell they possibly saw the ball move at all. I thought he did a great job of fielding it. Nevertheless, they overturned that, and the Bills end up getting the ball back in that situation. Still tooth and nail for them to get down the field. And as I mentioned, you had Shavers get this catch. They get in the goal-to-go territory, and this is Josh Allen's bread and fucking butter, as many people would tell you. Many of his critics and, I guess, supporters alike, I don't know. They'll tell you that. Nonetheless, he has, obviously, all the tools you would need to make that work in that situation. That's why they run it so much. So, they would naturally end up getting a touchdown here. Nope. Somehow, some way, they don't get the requisite yards that they need to get in the end zone for a score. And in fact, Zach Bond, as Josh Allen is trying to take advantage of a broken coverage in short, he stops him just short of the goal line, giving the Eagles the ball back, but working into the Bills' plans as they pin them back deep. And the Eagles proceed to not do much of anything. You still get that kind of feeling because even with the Bills getting that free stop, you had the most unexplainable thing happen from Josh Allen's perspective. They got a short field, they got a good return, and yet, for whatever reason, on this third down, Josh Allen just decided to try to do the Superman thing. There was a mention of him potentially having Todd Johnson on this play. And at that point, he'd been scrambling around, trying to extend it, trying to buy himself some time. If Todd Johnson had a chance at getting that there, maybe he throws it to him, but that's his decision at the end of the day. He chooses not to, fine. That's his choice in that moment. But at that point, if you're going to be having this mad scramble all over the place, it'd be much better for you to just get the ball out of your hands. I know that you couldn't settle for field goals at this point. You know, because field goals are going to get you beat against good teams. I understand that mentality. But Jalen Hunt and Jalen Carter were getting the perfect pressure on Josh Allen collectively. And Hunt was essentially able to, as Josh Allen kept running in a similar pattern all the way back, he literally gets sacked by Jalen Hunt. And he knows he was not supposed to be in that situation at all. Would have been better for him to throw it away. But then again, I suppose he was running so well that he worked himself back into the tackle box, if I'm not mistaken. So you couldn't do that, or that would be grounding. Either way, you get out of field goal range, you lose yardage, and then you have Josh Allen just pound his hand on the turf at that point in frustration, clearly. And when you are a dynamic player like that, you're definitely going to, light yourself up over that. It made no sense for Josh Allen to do that, genuinely. And it still didn't cost him like that because the Eagles would proceed to go 3-and-out. I'll get to them in a second. But it's safe to say that over the next two drives, with the Eagles continuing to be completely ghost, the Bills were able to get some kind of progress going. Now, these drives were a little long and, it needed a lot to go right. But ultimately, on this first one, Josh Allen was able to punch it in before Michael fucking Badgley, for the second week in a row, would miss a PAT. Now, you have to credit Jalen Carter with the block. He got up, he elevated for it, got his hand all over it. But it's like, what the fuck is going on with Michael Badgley? Seriously. Like, there were a couple of years where this man was considered automatic, and then you're doing this in back-to-back weeks, nearly costing the Bills in that Browns game if things didn't go a certain way there, and it puts you behind the eight ball in this game to where you would now, knowing that, the Bills are still in the fight here with a potential to still stay alive for the AFC East crown, you needed to, in this situation, play for the tie or play for the win. And it's like, those are that's a dangerous spot to be in already having to contemplate that, being behind with a little around 5 minutes left at this point. Especially if the Eagles were able to make some progress. But once more, they were not, with Christian Benford getting a deflection on Devontae Smith and ultimately giving the Bills the ball back. Started off very weirdly. Like the Eagles were allowing everything short and the Bills were taking it for some reason. I don't know what the hell Joe Brady was thinking. Like that play calling for the first few plays there, just way too passive. But on what would end up being a 4th and 10, after they had to burn one of their timeouts as a result of this thing, they pulled off a fucking hook and ladder trying to copycat the damn Seahawks. But it did work. They did get into Philadelphia territory. And once they got in there, they started playing with a little more urgency. As I mentioned, they got Brandon Cooks this lucky-ass catch down the field for a 36-yard gain to get in the goal-to-goal territory. And they, at that point, had 1 minute and 7 seconds left with an opportunity to put the game away completely. They trusted the run, and I guess at that point, Josh Allen had to scramble as everything else was covered. So, okay. They get that off. 18 seconds left with a couple timeouts. One could question why they let so much time run down, but as they mentioned on the broadcast, and I think it makes sense too, you do not want to give the Eagles the ball back even though they hadn't done much of anything. And the amount of yardage that they had in the second half as a unit is going to completely blow your fucking mind. But given that anyways, you still didn't want to take your chances. You wanted to be the team with the final possession to dictate the outcome of this game. And ultimately, things got chaotic. Initially, this Dawson Knox catch and run was ruled a touchdown. Only he would be ruled just short of the line to gain as Adoree Jackson, as much of a cone as he is, he'd actually make a really heads-up play. His elbow just hit down before the ball could cross the line. And at that point, it was 4th and very short. Putting it all on Josh Allen, of course. And he would promptly get in the end zone for a 1-yard rushing touchdown. 1-point ball game. Around 5 seconds left at this point. And man, it all came down to this. You could play for the tie and get into overtime, give yourself some new life. Or you could walk out of this game with a potential win by going for it for a 2-pointer and converting it. And they would do just that. The play was perfect. Perfect. Khalil Shakir was being guarded essentially at that point by no one. No one put a body on him. And at that point, he broke away from Zach Bond. He broke away from Reed Blankenship. He was wide open in the back of the end zone on essentially a crossing pattern. And still, Josh Allen, even without really being pressured all that much, he threw it just a few yards out in front of him. And it completely missed. They would go for it on the onside, but man, Josh Allen knew at that point he was about to slam that fucking helmet down, boy. He was pissed, livid at missing that one. And ultimately, with that, the Eagles would somehow get out of this with a 13-12 win after nearly blowing it all by not even showing up in the second half at all. Do you want to know what the Eagles proceeded to do in the second half? Because none of the numbers there are really going to do much to tell you anything. None of the individual numbers will do much. The Eagles finished with a net total of 17 yards in the second half. And Jalen Hurts did not complete a single pass in the second half. And they still won this game leaning aggressively on a defense that was nearly fully worn out at this point of time. Like, that is just some next level craziness. And to think that, again, when you look back at the Bucks game, this was not even the first game where they had such a paltry net total of yardage in the second half of a game this season to allow a team to fully work themselves back into it. It was a fucking 18-point lead damn near in the Eagles game against the Bucks earlier in the season, and it was almost a 13-point lead in this situation. Luckily for them, Josh Allen overshot Khalil Shakir. But it's like, come on, like, you can't. They're set as the champions for the NFC East. That much is clear, so they're gonna be in the playoffs. But bro, there are still situations where it's like, okay, this team has got to get this shit figured out before they end up playing at all, because there is no way you can carry yourselves into the playoffs like this. And same for the Bills in a way. I mean, bruh, you have that sloppy ass offense taking place out there. Yes, you are in a, like, inclement weather is going to be tough to deal with, but still, you're that great at home typically. So what the hell changed? What the fuck happened for you to go out there looking like that as a roster? Does not exude the most promise. I will tell you that much. But I guess Josh Allen can hang his hat on one thing with his 289 total yards on 65.7% completion and 2 rushing touchdowns. He would become the fastest and the youngest player to reach 300 total touchdowns in his NFL career. At what cost? At what cost? Brandon Cooks kind of turned back the clock a little bit with 4 receptions for 101 yards, but that still would be far from enough in this one. Far from enough. Man. All right. Moving on to a game, the last one that I would actually watch in real time, with a completely different tune. Bears versus 49ers on Sunday Night Football. I mean, hey, you had a situation where last week you got multiple 11-plus win teams duking it out on Thursday Night Football, and we saw how that game turned out. Well, it's safe to say that in this one, in a bit of a different manner, you got a potential Game of the Year candidate here as well. Definitely was a primetime bout between these teams who no one really expected to be in playoff conversation. Especially with what the 49ers have been dealing with. Fred Warner made multiple appearances on some of the pregame shows, and, he's still out at this time for a while, although there have been reports circulating from multiple areas believing that he is working on a possible return in the playoffs. So that could help matters depending on, how much progression he makes. But as far as the game goes, you have this depleted team completely facing off against one that, again, was not expected to take such a rise this season, yet are right in the mix. And instantly, you had madness as the very first pass would see Brock Purdy test a player in Jalen Johnson who was just returning from one of his injuries, promptly deflecting the pass, promptly having it bounce into TJ Edwards' mitts, and promptly having him go for a 34-yard pick six to start off the game. That's how we're coming already. Okay. That's normal. From there, it was just genuine madness. You got very few stops in this game from both sides. Even with the Bears being a defense that does force turnovers at a high rate under Dennis Allen, they could not really get off the field all that much unscathed. They mentioned that Brock Purdy last week, had himself a 5-touchdown performance and would then proceed in this game over time to become the first player to do it in back-to-back weeks for the 49ers. And have one of the better performances by 49ers quarterback in this situation, akin to Steve Young, I believe. Nothing could have prepared me for what the hell he put on display in this game. Absolutely nothing. I mean, like, where do you even start with this? Like, yes, you had a routine touchdown pass to Jake Tonjes here, and ironically enough, you would get a miniature stretch of defense played between both teams before the 49ers got right back to it, with Christian McCaffrey damn near taking it to the house himself. It looked like a weird sequence because he got some of the nastiest fucking cutbacks imaginable on a few of the defensive linemen. I mean, man, they lasted no chance. Like, Jervon Dexter Sr. and Tremaine Edmonds got exposed there. And Nashawn Wright, meanwhile, as Christian McCaffrey's running up the left side of the field, I don't know, he's trying to grab him out with one hand the whole time. He can barely get there. And then he just stumbles down. I think they mentioned that he got himself injured on that play. So that was an unfortunate part of it. But they still had to get right back to work. And at that point, with the zone running offense and the tempo that the 49ers were using, Ryan Robinson Jr. would barrel ahead for a 15-yard gain before Brock Purdy would take a fucking option play and run into the end zone for a 10-yard touchdown. Then he has the nerve to get out here and hit all these fucking dance moves. The man was hitting, they had this man hitting the fucking Dougie out here on multiple occasions. I'm like, who the fuck they got him feeling like right now? But not to be outdone, Caleb Williams, once he actually touched the field, was also just as much of a threat all over the place. This was an absolute laser to Luther Burden III, who would have himself a hell of a career night over the top of the defense for a 35-yard touchdown gain pretty much instantly, and ultimately tying the ball game there, where the ties just kept coming. Literally punch, counter punch in the offensive sense. Everybody was cooking on both sides of the ball, and they would not be denied of scoring a touchdown. It would be Christian McCaffrey on back-to-back runs to get it into the end zone, essentially, for a 5-yard touchdown run before you proceeded to have Caleb Williams do the damn Aaron Rodgers thing on a free play with an offsides penalty taking place and just literally line it up down the field. Damn near change. Matter of fact, it was the last one too because some of the angles are interesting. The one to Luther Burden III, he's getting pressure coming in his face, and I think as to, brace himself for impact, he literally switches his fucking foot stance and fires that shit off. It's crazy. Then you have him going out, buying Tom outside of the pocket, and then just rifling one down the field to an open Colston Loveland working on Tatum Bethune for a 36-yard touchdown catch. Just like that. And it would not end. Although the 49ers said, enough of this fucking shit. We're going to just grind out a drive here. Establish some ball control, which they already had done. Like the fact that this was a back and forth ball game with the Bears not even really having the ball for as much time. And with the 49ers having an extra possession, given that it led to a pick six instantly, it was a legitimate shootout. Booker himself would have a few plays here just getting at Brock Purdy between batting him down a couple of times and also getting a sack on him on this drive. That still wouldn't push them back too far enough to eventually overcome it and get themselves into the end zone with a 3-yard rushing touchdown for Brock Purdy. The half would end as the Bears were not able to get a response, but they would start the second half off right, as you would have Caleb Williams just continue to distribute it to multiple guys, including Jade Walker, including Luther Burden III once again, before DeAndre Swift would be the guy to rush it over in his own style of zone running over to the right side of the field for a 2-yard touchdown run. And then this play ended up happening because you would have Brock Purdy continue to matriculate the ball down the field with this offense. And while Christian McCaffrey would be credited with doing a lot of the low work to get them down there, it would be Brock Purdy, essentially in I form, faking it, scrambling out to his left, having Austin Booker on his side, trying to get at him again. And then, bruh, you can also group Andrew Billings into this. And again, Andrew Billings, man, that is a name of vintage names for you. But as he's trying to converge over to Brock Purdy as well, I suppose that Brock Purdy takes it upon himself to split the defense, work Austin Booker around him, run back up near the line of scrimmage in a forwards motion, and at that point, he's already gotten Booker off platform and gassed to the point where he can't even really catch him anymore. Then you have Purdy's apparent threat to run the ball in this situation taking form when you have Tremaine Edmonds and Nashawn Wright coming out of coverage to engage with Brock Purdy. And they both jump instantly as it frees up Kyle Juszczyk for an open score near the boundary to give the 49ers a 35-28 lead. He literally, in that play, toured around with all three of them. And again, I'm saying this the whole time. I can understand Wright coming forward and trying to be a sort of spy to tackle Brock Purdy if he chooses to run the football. I can understand him. But Edmonds, in this situation, is just completely like, what the fuck? What are you doing? Knowing that he's a good player, there was just no reason for him. Knowing that he is assigned to guard Kyle Juszczyk in that situation. Why the hell are you coming forward over to Brock Purdy in that situation? I don't think he's going to need that much help right in that situation to stop him. You have to handle your assignment. You cannot give him that outlet in an improv situation. And not only does he do it, he takes full advantage of it, and then he spams up another fucking Dougie move. Like, seriously, who the fuck did they have this man acting like the whole game? This shit was crazy. And still, the 49ers themselves, with a depleted defense, allow DeAndre Swift to turn it back and bust up the gut himself for a 22-yard run within a matter of a few minutes to tie up the ball game once again. Ironically enough, they mentioned a graphic or a stat line that is absolutely interesting to consider. Because they said on the broadcast that they, for the first time in a regular season game in NFL history, had a game tied up at intervals of 7, 14, 21, 28, and 35. It had never happened before, and it had only happened one time in a playoff game, weirdly enough. That's how we knew that this was just going to be a true buzzer beater situation here. I mean, you have a game going like that with that kind of flow and not really much defense. Oh, man. Like, this was coming down to the wire. That much was clear. And, I mean, the Bears, they'd been, with tying up the game consistently, they'd actually, after that interception, had been playing at either a tied standpoint or from behind in these situations to get these touchdowns in the first place. Man, Luther Burden III, man, literally, as I was saying, with every single rep, you can see where the fucking DJ Moorcomp comes in. Like, he just continued to make the most out of his touches. Not all of these were like the touchdown catch that he got earlier on, just banging his head on the goalpost on essentially a poster all the way down the field. They weren't like that. Some of them were simply him just getting in, an open but shorter space and making dynamic plays after the catch. Like, they definitely have done something with that pick there. And Colston Loveland as well would also get himself a 32-yard gain on this drive, as they later would go on to mention on what would be the final drive for the Bears here, he'd be a factor there. You're not expecting a rookie to be associated with clutch time, but at the same point, Colston Loveland had been in multiple situations all year long in some of these Bears comebacks where they've looked his way to, get them a first down or potentially give them the edge. I mean, hell, this is the same man that proceeded to take advantage of no tackle Jordan Battle and get himself a deep-ass touchdown catch to essentially game against the Bengals earlier in the year. So to trust him in that situation would not be wrong, per se. Before we even get to that point, though, the Bears would get a field goal before giving up what would be an in-breaking route to Jaywan Jennings that would go all the way for a touchdown catch, despite having two Bears defenders in the area with an ability to catch him. Only Pearsall got out for a nice lead block on Jaquan Brisker to prevent that from happening. But, man, like, wow. Literally, there was just no way that should have happened so quickly. But you know what? It gave the Bears a chance to do what they have been doing all season long in coming back in the final 2 minutes of a ball game. They already had the most wins in NFL history in that scenario, and they were looking to do it again. And it was looking promising. I mean, they hit up Caleb Williams, essentially had him scramble out for one. They had Luther Burden III continue to clutch up and pick one up before having an untimely drop on 3rd and short, and they took him out after that point instantly. To that point, he caught all 8 of his targets. That is a genuine rookie mistake. Unfortunate to have it at that point, but it all came down to the 4th down. And they had the advantage at that point. They did let a good amount of time run down, but they still had their timeout in use. They were still near the red zone. I didn't really have a problem with it from that perspective. But it could hurt you if you ended up running out of time. And ultimately, they had a chance to get one over the middle to Colston Loveland, where they would be forced to use their final timeout. I thought initially that the game plan with them having 26 seconds left on the docket and no timeouts to work with was that, they would go for a pass, at least one pass, that would, work out of bounds to potentially, again, conserve the clock, get them closer to the end zone, and, prevent them from wasting any more time than they already had. An incomplete pass wasn't the worst thing in the world either, and, that is what would happen there. Again, they're trying to keep everything over the top behind them, or they're trying to keep everything over the top and out in front of them to not let anything get behind them. And then also protect the boundaries as well. Seeing as the Bears had no more timeouts to work with, you could, force them to run down some more unnecessary clock anyways in your position. Now, Collinsworth at the same time was mentioning it as well, that, you had another shot potentially at getting a shorter route to go, working yourself out of bounds, and potentially conserving the proper energy you would need for maybe a 3rd down, for maybe a 1st down pickup. Just something short, simple, nothing too complicated. I suppose the Bears on their end felt the pressure of it and decided to just go with another hook and ladder to copy the Seahawks once again. And at that point, they had let 16 seconds run on that play, leaving this 2nd and goal to be the final play of the game, regardless of what happened. And you saw a lot from Caleb Williams on the entire night of this. Like, the scrambling ability is there, although you want him to pick it up on the routine plays. That's the key. Like, there were some misses that were just tough, but he'd been a dynamic player for most of the game. And so him evading what would be a contain from Bryce Huff into, leaping out of it, scrambling all the way over to the left side of the field makes sense. But then you had other oncoming pressure from other linemen for this team that kept on forcing him to just wait. The coverage was so well done as well to where, even as he was scrambling out trying to find an open man, there was nothing there. It came to a point where that pressure started closing in as he was nearing the sidelines, and he had to back up several times, under duress, just to try to get a pass off. And at the moment that he attempts to do it, you literally have a defender diving at his torso. He has to get off his feet completely just to release it. And as we see everything unfold, bro, this shit got so fucking close. Because John A. Walker, the culprit for the game-tying touchdown in regulation against the Commanders last week, damn near caught this touchdown pass to win the Bears the game. But it hit the dirt first. Williams, again, under that much pressure, exerting that much energy, he didn't have enough on the pass. And that would ultimately give the 49ers a 42-38 victory in this game. True madness, to say the least. And a lot would happen here. For one, you would have, at halftime, they mentioned a few numbers here, that this would be the only game since 1970 in which both teams scored at least 3 touchdowns in the first 18 minutes of play. And it was also the most yards in a first half for the 49ers offense since 1998, which ended up landing them about 330. Still insane to think that they had taken a punt for the first time in this month of December in this game. The 49ers offense had been continuing to roll, and they kept making sure they imposed their will on that front throughout the game. Man, as for the numbers here, there are a lot of them. Brock Purdy would have a total of 331 yards and 5 total touchdowns with 3 passing, along with an interception on 72.7% completion. And they would be the first 49er quarterback since 2012, Colin Kaepernick, with at least 2 passing and rushing touchdowns in a game. Just absolute madness. Christian McCaffrey as well would have a total of 27 touches and 181 yards, along with a rushing touchdown, making himself the player who is now tied, for the most 2,000-yard scrimmage touchdown, or scrimmage yard, and 15-plus rushing touchdown seasons in the NFL. Scrimmage touchdowns, rather. As for the receivers, Ricky Pearsall had 5 receptions for 85 yards, and Jake Tonjes had 7 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. As for the Bears, Caleb Williams had 330 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 59.5% completion. You want to see that completion percentage get up in time, but bruh, he was actually fucking dealing in this game. This shit was crazy to watch, man. Truly. The Bears would definitely have run the ball a little more than they did in this game, but they still had 110 yards on the ground, 5 yards a pop, and 2 rushing touchdowns from DeAndre Swift to lead the way on 6 yards per carry with 54 yards. Luther Burden III, career night for him, with 8 receptions, 138 yards, and a touchdown. Colson Loveland also had 6 receptions for 94 yards and a score. And Tatum Bethune for the 49ers had 11 tackles with a tackle for loss and a pass deflection in this game. I guess that's a reasonable performance considering there wasn't a whole lot of defense in this game. Man. With the results of that game, the Bears would be eliminated for contention from the number 1 seed in the NFC. Meanwhile, the 49ers would stay alive there and still have a chance to win the entire division and the number 1 seed in the NFC completely. And, that's a good statement to have before getting into some of the other games here I did not watch live. To start out with Texans and Chargers on Saturday, this one couldn't have started out any better for Stroud and that side. You had both of the Iowa State men in Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins go back-to-back with each other for touchdown passes that spanned over at least 40 yards, and Jaden Higgins opened the shit up with a fucking 75-yard touchdown catch. They had a 14-0 lead just like that before we were even a full 6 minutes out of the first, into the first quarter. And yet, this game just got incredibly weird after that. Neither team was really able to put much of anything together, but you had the tale of two quarters, literally. Stroud would proceed to, on a matter of three different possessions, throw two picks, one to Derwin James Jr. and one to Elijah Molden of all people. That could have potentially led to this being a one-score game in spite of all of that. If only Cameron Dicker didn't miss his second field goal attempt of the day, which was definitely interesting to track, knowing that Cameron Dicker is one of the more automatic kickers in the entire league. But I digress. At that time, at halftime, it was 14-3 before the Chargers started chipping away at it and ultimately got themselves within a touchdown as they would finish off a 5-minute drive around with Rondé Gatson in the second, getting in for a 1-yard touchdown catch to make this 17-10. The woes would not stop, though. Neither team could take that next punch for a while. And while the Texans were able to get themselves on the board with a field goal, the Chargers weren't out of it, as they would get a much shorter drive here, but ultimately have Amari and Hampton get them in the end zone for a 5-yard rushing touchdown to, in theory, bring the game within one. Only Cameron Dicker, on what was just seemingly an awkward day, yet again missed a PAT this time. Now, if you were the Chargers, you got the ball back, you would have to potentially go all the way down the field and drop to score to win, rather than tying it up, potentially taking it to overtime, and fighting to see another potential possession. Instead, the Texans would get the ball back and proceed to burn out most of the rest of the clock, ultimately giving them a 20-16 win on Saturday, as in this game, you had C.J. Stroud pick up 244 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions on 57.1% completion. The run game was okay. They had 118 yards on the ground, but just averaged 3.5 yards per carry, which ain't really going to always get the job done. Jaden Higgins had 2 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown, while Nico Collins had 3 receptions for 57 yards, and Jalen Noel had 3 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. As for the Chargers, Justin Herbert had 236 passing yards, along with a touchdown and interception on 65.6% completion. As a unit, they ran the Chargers for just 74 yards on 3.4 yards per carry. Quentin Johnson had 5 receptions for 98 yards. Rondé Gatson the second had 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. And Amari and Hampton had 8 receptions for 31 yards. 8 receptions. Crazy. Wow. Deion Henley also had 10 tackles, while Henry Toto had 12 in a TFL added on top of that. Man, that is just some kind of crazy sequencing there. But not all that different from some of the stuff you would see in this game right here. The Bears, the Seahawks and the Panthers. Man, I watched this in post. How the hell do you have a situation where Sam Darnold literally loses the ball and then proceeds to play like a linebacker for some reason, force a fumble on one of the guys that initially recovered it, and then lose the football again before Christian Roseboom, of all people, fell right back onto it? And to think that game wasn't on live because you had the Steelers-Browns game playing over that. If that would have been watched live, that would have added even more to the chaos going on there. But I digress. I'll be fair and state that the Panthers defense has obviously been legitimate for some time, and they held this offense in absolute check in the first half. That much is true. They could not really generate a lot of their own opportunities. This was a 3-3 ball game at halftime. A 3-3 ball game? Even in situations where the Seahawks were able to force some of their own stops. And they did so very well. That's how the Seahawks defense is. But the Panthers, man, they were in the fight for a lot longer than maybe even they expected to be. And that is that is massive respect to Derrick Brown, of course, J.C. Horn, holding down that side of the football and ultimately continuing to be a pest all over the place. I mean, it even continued, as you would think that the Seahawks would want to get things started off properly in the third quarter, and they were briefly driving before you had Michael Jackson Sr., the former Seahawk, pick off a Sam Darnold pass to get the Panthers the ball right back. That could have been an opportunity right there for them to potentially move down the field, take some clock off, potentially take a lead. Instead, the very next play, you have DeMarcus Lawrence coming in there, ripping the ball right out of Chuba Hubbard's hands and giving the Seahawks an opportunity to go and take advantage of a short field. They initially thought he scored a touchdown, but that was not confirmed. That would be overturned via a challenge. Still, you would have the Seahawks work their way into goal-to-go territory where Zach Charbonnet is fucking king. And he would score himself another touchdown in the red zone. He has been legitimately an ace there all season long. Even if we want to say it comes at the expense of Kenneth Walker III touches, he's legitimately a power back. There's no surprise that he's being that productive in that situation. So it makes sense. Promptly, the Seahawks would just continue to unload from there. Julian Love would take advantage of a very rough Bryce Young pass and get himself an interception that would lead to another short field that would lead to A.J. Barner continuing to have a spectacular season on his end and get in for a 17-yard touchdown catch, do the spike and everything to give the Seahawks a 17-3 lead right there. The Panthers had an opportunity to at least get this game within one possession, and they would do that, though mostly through Bryce Young's legs and the run game as a whole. Because when it came to dealing through the air, they just did not have it. It would help them to get shorter distance to the end zone, but it would be Bryce Young with his running ability to get in the end zone for a 10-yard rushing touchdown and kind of put the Seahawks on the defensive a little bit, force them into potentially doing something uncomfortable. All the Seahawks proceeded to do from there was just kind of play bully ball. Now, it did not help that J.C. Horn committed this face mask penalty on Jackson Smith and Jigba on what was going to be 4th and 17 at that point with the stop. But with that warranting an automatic first down, from there, the Seahawks just continued to pick it right back up. Jackson Smith and Jigba would get himself a couple of catches down the field to work them deeper into the red zone. And at that point, they had ground out 8 minutes off the clock. Jason Myers would kick himself another field goal to make even more history for himself this season and give the Seahawks a 20-10 lead. The Panthers at that point, they couldn't do much of anything, man. And when you factor all that in, ultimately, Boye Mafe, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Julian Love were able to get pivotal stops on different players of the Panthers squad to force a turnover on downs in their own territory. The Seahawks would traditionally, again, be conservative by nature, potentially, force all of the timeouts to go, take a knee, do all that thing. Instead, Zach Charbonnet is just too good in power back situations that he decides to score a touchdown anyway to increase the lead to 17 for some style points, I suppose. And you would have the Panthers, after the 2-minute warning, take multiple kneels. They tried to make this a bonus coverage game, but by that point, I wasn't even willing to count it. It just wasn't worth it. It wasn't close at that point. And you get back on this broadcast, you see them continuing to kneel the ball out. And even they had a field day with it, the broadcast team, because it's like you're going to see that in a genuine victory, and you decide to call that now just to end the game. I mean, yes, the Seahawks did score a touchdown on the drive before. I guess maybe Canales' thinking was that, hey, they were going to try to run up the score. We don't want to have them run up the score. I don't think that was the Seahawks' plan in that situation. That's literally just how it happened. But I digress. Regardless, the Seahawks would walk out of there with a 27-10 victory. You would have Bryce Young. Defense is so fucking good, man. You would have Bryce Young literally limited to 54 passing yards on 58.3% completion with an interception. That is so fucking good. That's so good. Meanwhile, the rushing attack for the Panthers wasn't as lethal in this one, and they were going to need to lean on that in order to have more success in this game, which, again, 3.8 yards per carry, 99 yards. Nah, that ain't going to do it. No receiver on this Panther squad had greater than 20 receiving yards. In fact, Jalen Coker was the leader with just 2 receptions and 16 passing yards. That is absolutely atrocious. It puts the Panthers in a situation where, regardless, of whatever the outcome in the Bucs game might have been at that point, the Panthers would have to play for the division title next week against the Buccaneers. As for the Seahawks, man, Sam Darnold, it was a rough one. I'll admit, 147 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, 166.7% completion ain't the best look in the world. But this is what the team can do. The defense is coming together like that. You're going to have ample opportunities to make things happen on the offensive end, and they stepped it up when they needed to. But also, the rushing attack as a unit, they've been taking steps forward each and every week over the last half of the season, I should say, and this was a great showing by that unit. 163 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns on 4.5 yards per carry, led by both of the touchdowns from Zach Charbonnet, and also 110 yards on the ground for him in a season where he would become the Seahawk with the most rushing touchdowns in a single season since 2015 Marshawn Lynch. You gotta fucking love that. That is just aligning and all coming together at that point. If you figure out a few more things, and if you can actually protect the football more, continue to win the turnover margin, it makes the Seahawks team incredibly fucking dangerous. And I'm fucking here for it. I'm so fucking here for it, man. As for the receivers, Jackson Smith-Njigba had 9 receptions for 72 yards, and A.J. Barner had 3 receptions for 43 yards and a score in this one as well. But holy shit. Now the Seahawks as well, given that the 49ers secured that the day before, they would also have a chance at the number 1 seed and can essentially get it and the division title if they win next week against the 49ers, and that game will be a Saturday nighter at 8 p.m. That should be incredibly fucking interesting. Moving on to the Bucs and the Dolphins. And, man, the Dolphins are obviously out. But if the Bucs could win this one, they would be in a situation where they go into this, given the result of the Panthers game, on the right side of victory, with some potential momentum to win that one out in a potential situation. Little did they know that Quinn Ewers, in games that again are going to look like exhibition matches for him, just to test out what exactly he can provide for this team. Well, man, he had other plans. Bro, one of the first things I track in this, he's unloading a fucking pass to the fellow rookie, former Oklahoma and Missouri wide receiver, Theo Wees Jr. for a 63-yard touchdown catch. And not only do they tie the ball game up at that point, but the Dolphins actually have a lead. Meanwhile, the Bucks can't move enough and protect the ball enough against this Miami fucking defense without a single cornerback, with very little pass rush. It put them in an interesting scenario, to say the least. And as we know, the Dolphins would get out to a 17-7 lead with Greg Dulcich getting the 7-yard touchdown catch. Man, it got even worse for the Bucks once they saw that their field goal would get fucking blocked by Zeke Biggers. Yes. And the Dolphins held a lead at halftime on this team. A lead that they would never give up. Crazy. Even with this damn drive from the Bucks right here, later on in the third quarter, you move the ball down the field 50 yards in a matter of 8 minutes and 6 seconds. And you don't come away with a touchdown at all. Matter of fact, it gets stopped once you have the former Seahawk and Tyrell Dotson forcing a sack fumble that is recovered by the Bucks in that moment, but ultimately forces them to settle for a field goal and make it a touchdown game. Now, this is still, towards the tail end of the third quarter, but you still have enough time to get yourself fully back into this. And I mean, even you giving up a field goal to the Dolphins in a situation where Malik Washington was able to get a hell of a fucking return on this kickoff, you are not in the worst position in the world. This is still attainable in a way. And they couldn't do it. They continued to shoot themselves in the foot. Because not only would you have Baker Mayfield throw another interception after a Dolphins punt, but you also had, after a 3-and-out this time, with your defense actually trying to do as best as they can to show up, you fumble the football, with Bradley Chubb forcing another sack fumble on Baker Mayfield in this one, and having one of the other Dolphins players recover it at that time just to steal a possession away. Like, at that point, I'm like, oh, now you want to go drive down the field and score a touchdown. Because they proceed to, in a minute, with a 59-yard catch from Chris Godwin to start it out, a pass interference penalty to get them in goal-to-goal territory, and the old reliable Michael Evans getting up in the end zone for a touchdown catch. Fine, but isn't that a little too late for that now? You had more than enough chances with an offense that hadn't been blowing you out of the water to come back and take the lead. And at every turn, again, you just proceeded to fall short. So now it all came down to an onside kick, which they would not get, with Davon Achane being the man on the hands team for them, recovering it and allowing the Dolphins to close out the game with a 20-17 win to even up both teams at 7-9 after this game. Quinn Ewers for this game had 172 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 63.6% completion. Not half bad for him at all, especially compared to how things were going for him last week against the Bengals. As for the rushing attack, Dolphins as a whole had 145 yards on 4.8 yards per carry on the ground, with Davon Achane leading the way with 83. And Theo Wees Jr. would lead their wide receivers with the lone 63-yard touchdown catch, while Greg Dulcich had 5 receptions for 58 yards and a score as well. As for Baker Mayfield, he had 346 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions on 75% completion, with 33 completions as well. As gaudy as those numbers might be, again, the turnovers were both killers in that moment. And even then, when it mattered for a while, until you had to get in desperation mode, you couldn't even bother to convert on those opportunities when you were able to drive the ball down the field. So it's like, you could take those numbers with a grain of salt, to be honest, especially when you consider that they had no choice but to make Baker Mayfield throw the ball 44 times, which could be questionable. But considering that as a whole, no rusher on this team ran for more than 20 yards, and they combined for 53 yards on 3.3 yards per carry. You had no other choice but to pass the ball. I guess, again, receivers, to an extent, kind of got to work. As Jalen McMillan would have 7 receptions for 114 yards. Chris Godwin Jr. would have 7 receptions for 108 yards as well, while K. Dotton had 4 receptions for 33 yards. Meanwhile, Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka would combine for 6 catches and 51 yards, with Mike Evans getting the touchdown. It's tough to see Emeka Egbuka go out like that to where he's barely getting utilized. But again, that is by the nature of having a deep wide receiver core. All of these guys, all of them, are talented. And as I've been saying, McMillan and Egbuka can be the future of the franchise once they do decide to move on from Chris Godwin Jr. and eventually Mike Evans, probably in the course of a retirement. He is going to be a Buck for life. It would be delusional of me to think that he would move anywhere else. But, man, it's like that is just so rough. That's so rough for him, considering how well he started the season. So, yeah. All you need to know about the Pats and the Jets is this. They got blown the fuck out. So, fuck the Jets. Just end the season. You lost by 32 points at home to this Patriots squad. Like, they had no chance. No chance. You never felt that way. It was 35-3 at halftime. The most revealing thing isn't even the fact that they've continued to point out how they called multiple fake punts in a matter of 90 seconds. The most revealing thing isn't the fact that they had turned down a fan from participating in a little halftime contest of kicking field goals because she had experience as a player in high school soccer or something like that. I've heard those things. Yet the most revealing thing to me in this one that shows the incompetence of this fucking team is the fact that they had on one of these Ramondre Stevenson touchdown catches, because the man was getting fed all around, he got lined up and went out to run his route, and in coverage against him was a fucking defensive lineman. And the second that I saw that shit, I knew that it was going to get even worse than it already was at that point. They didn't even have to play Drake May later on in the game, and they gave Josh Dobbs a chance to step up to the plate and do his own work with this fucking team. That's how crazy this shit was. Drake May legitimately had one of the greatest outings of all time that any quarterback could ask for, being the first in NFL history to have at least 90% completion in a game with over 250 passing yards and 5 touchdown passes. He also became the first Patriots quarterback since 2017, Tom Brady, with a 5 touchdown performance, and became the first quarterback in Patriots history to have 5 different touchdown passes to 5 different wide receivers in the game. Those being Stephon Diggs with 1, leading the receiving core with 6 receptions for 101 yards, Ramondre Stevenson out of the backfield on a day where he combined for 13 touches and 102 fucking yards and 2 total touchdowns. Hunter Henry with 1 in the red zone for 3 catches and 49 yards to tag that onto. Efton Chisholm III with 2 receptions for 40 yards and another score. And then Austin Hooper with a touchdown catch along with another reception for 11 total yards to start out the game for the Patriots. It was just so automatic for the man. And yet, in a brutal twist of just fuckery, completely, to show you how crazy the quarterback rating thing can get, because I guess some people just don't favor it. I've never seen a game where you have a quarterback complete more than 90% of his passes and have just 2 incomplete passes to 5 total interceptions without turning the ball over, well, touchdowns rather, without turning the ball over at all. Whoa. Gotta slow down. But seriously, you have that prolific of a game for a quarterback, and it ends with him finishing with only a 157 quarterback rating. How the fuck does that not warrant a perfect quarterback rating? If this were college, that would far exceed a perfect quarterback rating. And he doesn't even get that point. He falls short after literally pitching a perfect game against a defense that has continued to get slaughtered. They still have not forced an interception, and the Jets are in danger of becoming the first team in NFL history to go a full season without forcing an interception. Like, come on, man. Even the fucking, as vaunted as the Ravens have been, even they were able to force Drake May into a mistake. You could do that one fucking time. Okay. Breece Hall may as well enjoy it too. He would get himself a late touchdown run on a day where he combined for 16 total touches and 129 yards, 111 rushing, along with a rushing touchdown. But bruh, y'all just gotta move on from him in the same way that y'all were willing to trade away Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, bro. Just free him, bro. This is getting sickening. The fact that he is one of the more versatile running backs in the NFL, and yet is not able to realize that because of how inept the entire team is. It's just a fucking crime, bro. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. So that's all there is to say about that game. Just a complete and total blowout. The Patriots as well, although, it happened kind of later on. With that Bills loss, the Patriots will later on be able to secure the division title for the AFC East. Securing that spot, so they'll have a top 4 seed at least, while the Bills would drop down to being one of the other 3 teams, though they still are in the playoffs. As for this next game, the Jags and the Colts, they also tried to make this bonus coverage for some reason, and it would have taken something absolutely crazy for me to confirm that as such, because they got themselves an opportunity to maybe get a Hail Mary. And I'm saying the whole time, there's no way you're trusting Phillip Rivers' old ass to chuck a Hail Mary deep. Now, this Hail Mary attempt by Riley Leonard almost got there. It did. But Alec Pierce, known to be a physical wide receiver, improperly attempted to try to get positioning. He failed to do so. And as a result, that pass was picked off, ending this Jaguars-Colts game with a score of 23-17 in Jacksonville's favor. Trevor Lawrence would have 263 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, along with an interception on 62.2% completion. Travis Etienne had 17 rushes for 76 yards. Parker Washington had 8 receptions for 115 yards, and Brenton Strange had 3 receptions for 54 yards, while Felix Adelaide added 12 tackles in a game where the Jaguars, with the win, would stay alive for an opportunity at the 1 seed, and also have a shot to still win the AFC South. But they will have to face off or hope that the Texans drop that game and they win to ultimately see it through. As for the Colts, Phillip Rivers had 147 yards and a touchdown with an interception on 56.7% completion. Jonathan Taylor just continued to get bottled up in this game. It's unfortunate to see. He had 70 rushing yards on 21 carries, 3.3 yards per pop, but a touchdown run. Tyler Warren had 5 receptions for 43 yards, and Josh Downs had 2 receptions for 34 yards. Nick Cross and Kenny Moore II would both have 10 tackles each, with both also having at least in TFL in this game as well. And with the result here, Phillip Rivers would be definitively benched for Riley Leonard, per multiple reports, and the Colts are set to start him next week against the Texans. So again, if the Jags want to win that division, they can't go up against them head up. They are going to have to lean on rookie Riley Leonard to do the good work for them and allow them to win the division. All right. Cardinals, Bengals, same thing, man. Like, what did you really expect? Yes, you had Michael Wilson just continue this fucking tear of just making some of the craziest plays and getting the contributions in, even with Marvin Harrison Jr. being back for a time before being taken out of the game with re-aggravating his heel injury. Yet, this just wasn't even close. Like, the lead got as large as fucking 37-7 in this game. As large as that. That's how scorching hot this was for the Bengals offense as a whole. Like, at that point, man, what can you even do? If this just doesn't show you that the Cardinals need a complete and total turnaround, even if it does mean that, hey, maybe this is Kyler Murray's last season with the team, bro, you need to fix a whole hell of a lot more. Even if the Bengals are, playing like this, not really being motivated to do much more than that, because they can't possibly extend their season past this point, still, man, some kind of resistance, some kind of fight at all. No, they proceed to get beaten by 20 plus again. The only bright spot for them might be the fact that Trey McBride would get in the end zone for a late touchdown to shorten this to 23 in the first place, to shame them from a little bit of embarrassment. But when looking at the numbers as well, with him having a monster 10-catch, 76-yard game for a touchdown, he would reset and now becomes the tight end with essentially the most receptions in a single season in NFL history. And to think that just a year ago, Brock Bowers was charging close to the record, but came just short of breaking it. Well, now Trey McBride can say that he sits atop that throne, breaking Zach Ertz's previous record set in 2018 and having some form of recognition for it. He should definitely be an all-pro in that situation. I would think so. As for other numbers for the Cardinals on this end, they still can't run the fucking ball. And again, yes, depleted as they are, it's going to be a little bit expected, but still 42 yards on 3.2 yards per carry. Like, come on, man. Michael Wilson also added 5 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown. Hey, at least the Ohio State man and Cody Simon had 15 fucking tackles with a half sack. But still, that ain't going to do much for a team that is just completely, bad all over the place. There's a reason why they're 3-13. As for the Bengals, Joe Burrow had 305 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 77.4% completion. Chase Brown had a total of 25 touches and 141 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns. Jamar Chase had 7 receptions for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns, making him, I think, they mentioned that he was one of 3 players with at least 7 receiving touchdowns or more in their first 4 seasons. I might be misreading that stat line correctly. But he's in the same ballpark as, I believe, Brandon Marshall, Randy Moss, and a few other wide receivers. That's good company to be a part of. But I think I might be reading that stat a little wrong, unfortunately. T. Higgins had 4 receptions for 59 yards, and Mike Gesicki had 2 receptions for 47 yards. Andre Oshivas also added 4 receptions for 41 yards. All right. The Saints and the Titans next. This one was actually competitive somewhat. And I mean, yes, it's to be expected in a battle of truly bad teams. Credit Trace Young, by the way, for completely stripping the ball away from Cam Ward, leading to an instant scoop and score touchdown for him to make the game 13-10 at that point. But they for a while, man, they were going at it. I mean, hell, you had the Titans take a fucking 10-point lead here with Alec Eilemaner being able to get himself a 7-yard touchdown catch from Cam Ward to make this 20-10 at the half. The Saints had responses in them. Like, this was truly a back and forth game. And ultimately, although the Saints had tried to chip away with a touchdown pass to Chris Olave in the third quarter, ultimately they were still down by 6 points at this time. And it could have been even worse for them when you consider that they had driven 70 yards down the fucking field on one of their first drives in the fourth quarter before Dante Pettis. Yes, Dante Pettis is still in the league. He would fumble it into the end zone, and you would have Kyer Elam, of all cornerbacks, pounce on the ball, give the Titans the ball back with a chance to potentially extend their lead. Once the Saints defense tightened up, they would go on 2 back-to-back touchdown drives, with Chris Olave being a major contributor on this 60-yard catch down the field before Kevin Austin Jr. would get himself in the end zone from 10 yards out. You would also have Aldrick Estime get himself a 32-yard touchdown run for the 8-point lead at that time. With the Titans being stopped there, the Saints would win in this battle of bid, 34-26. Tyler Shuck would have 333 passing yards, along with 2 touchdowns on 81.5% completion, while Aldrick Estime accounted for 14 rushes and 94 yards with a score. Chris Olave in this whole time has been getting fed, man. Another 100-yard game for him, with 8 receptions for 119 yards and a touchdown. He would reach 100 catches this season as well with that result. It's a long time coming. And to think that there was something mentioned, he had gone on, different sources and talked about this. He kind of rehashed this on like a particular nightcap episode I didn't even really tune into, but saw an allusion to, that he was really contemplating retirement at a point after last season, given the amount of concussions he had suffered to this point. And while the Saints are still a long away from contention, bruh, that you gotta love that part of it. Juwan Johnson had 4 receptions for 95 yards. Dante Pettis had 3 receptions for 53 yards. And it could have been more if only you would have held on to the ball. And Kevin Austin Jr. had 4 receptions for 52 yards. As for the Titans, Cam Ward had 251 yards and 2 touchdowns on 52.5% completion. Kind of paltry, but they were still winning. They still had a lead at this point. So, it wasn't all just lackluster at all. Tony Pollard had 18 rushes for 85 yards. Chimere Dike had 4 receptions for 55 yards. Chigozie Okonkwo had 3 receptions for 55 yards and a score. Van Jefferson had 3 receptions for 46 yards. And Alec Iomanner had 4 receptions for 37 yards and a touchdown. Gray, one of their players on the defensive side, also logged 12 tackles on the day. Yeah, the Raiders are going to be investigated. That's what I have to say about this. Max Crosby listed as out, with him still being clearly ready to go. Brock Bowers, one of your better offensive weapons, being told you're going to go on IR for the rest of the season and we're not going to activate you again, just to proceed to lose this game by 24 points to a Giants team and a man in Jackson Dart who hadn't done much of anything last week himself. This shit is fucking embarrassing. And it's been like this the whole season. Like, yes, there are a number of different things going on behind the scenes that I may not be able to fully attest to. But I would think that when a team is being led, represented by, in different positions, Tom Brady and fucking Pete Carroll, I would expect them to have a little more dignity and respect about the way that they operate as a fucking program. I would expect them to come out every single Sunday showing some sense of fucking fight. And yet that didn't happen as you let a Giants team that is equally as bad as you beat you by 24 points in a year that you had already been getting blown out on multiple occasions by different ball clubs. This shit is ridiculous, man. Expect way more out of those two individuals with the way that they led their respective teams in their careers before this stop. And we can't even get that because of all this damn ineptitude. They still can't run the fucking ball. They still can't run the ball. And I genuinely do not know what is going on with Geno Smith. It's hard to defend that. I mean, yes, 176 yards on 71.4% completion and a touchdown and 2 interceptions. Like that's just, like, come on. What is that exactly? Michael Myers definitely happy that he got his 9 receptions and 89 yards. And yeah, Tyler Lockett finally got a touchdown catch. But, I mean, bro, that is just actually atrocious, man. It truly is. Like, damn. I mean, I guess you got what you wanted. You're probably going to get a higher overall pick. But they should check that shit out. And, you know, as I've heard, if they find anything out about this, find anything irregular about it, and anything that potentially violates, NFL guidelines here, man, they are going to lay the hammer down, and probably should. I would hope that in their case for Las Vegas, it was truly fucking worth it. Because you put your fans in a situation where they gotta try to go out and act like they will support this. Act like they have a chance to win this game entirely. And you, by actively coming out and saying that you're putting those guys on IR and just shutting them down for the season, you remove all opportunity for them to go out and actually see their team win the fucking game. Even Deonte Banks, of all people, was able to get a kickoff return on this team to increase the lead to 27-10 at the time. And we know how much of a not very good player he's turned out to be at this point. I can't say full out bust. You know, he's still a couple years in there. But they certainly have not hit on the man. And he was still making plays in this game for them. Jackson Dart, meanwhile, had a combined 255 yards and 2 touchdown runs in a game where he completed 73.3% of his passes, but did not have to throw a single touchdown pass to even win. Wan'Dale Robinson had 11 receptions for 113 yards in this game as well. Credit to him. Like that, I guess you're leaving with something. And Wan'Dale Robinson gets closer to having a 100 catch season, while I think also logging what is his first 1,000 yard season. So I guess, he deserves credit for that. And, with him being their only true weapon at the wide receiver position, having all of these defenses keying on him specifically to try to stop him, and still coming out with that, while not being able to have a guy like Malik Neighbors flanking your side, you have to give him respect for that. Yeah, like I can give credit to him for that for sure. But hey, Giants win that one 34-10. It was not even in question at that point. And again, it's crazy. Like, I mean, hey, maybe it was a tank bowl, but I suppose there are levels to the shit. Moving on to the Monday Night Football game between the Rams and the Falcons yesterday. And I didn't watch it live, but I can tell you right now, the shit was fucking chaos. Fucking chaos. Because just think about this before entering the game. We already understand that before entering this, the Rams, being at an 11-4 record, do still have a chance at winning the NFC West, do still have a chance at getting the 1 seed if things go a certain way. And on the other end, when you see that on Sunday, the Bucs and the Panthers lost, the Falcons, after seemingly being eliminated from playoff contention mathematically, have lucked out to the point where they have come back from the literal dead with an opportunity to, if they win out and if they get into this game next week where the Bucs win, you have a 3-way tie of 8-9 records at the top of the NFC South. Like, it makes, like, who? This is the eternal question. Who wants to win this division at this point? How? How have you fucked around and given the damn Falcons, down Michael Penix Jr. at this point, a chance at hope to still come out of this with the division title? This is ridiculous. And you want to know what's crazy? You want to know what's even crazier? The Falcons actually played this shit in the first half like they were one of the best teams in the fucking league. I'm tracking this the whole way, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, they get this first touchdown pass to Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. Okay, that's standard. Fine, whatever. Then it keeps on going on and on. Oh my gosh, hold on, wait a second. They're forcing Matthew Stafford to do what? A man in Matthew Stafford who entered this game with an 8-1 touchdown to interception ratio had quite literally in the second quarter thrown multiple interceptions, and also to end off the first quarter had a turnover on downs as they were getting into, Falcons territory in the red zone, with Kyron Williams being stopped by a guy with the last name Kareem. And that interception, that first one by Matthew Stafford, would lead to a fucking pick six. A pick six for Jesse Bates III, one of the best safeties in the NFL. At that point, it's a 14-0 lead. And then you have an exchange of punts. Relatively standard, but it's still crazy because a Rams team that, again, a week earlier engaged in a shootout with the same Seahawks squad that just beat the Panthers by fucking 17 points is now struggling to beat the Falcons. Now, again, I'm not even saying that to be braggadocious. I could be so braggadocious about that shit and about how much of a difference a week makes, but I'm not doing that. At some point, the logic, the rationality has to win, because there is just literally no way to conceive that this team has a chance to take down one of the better teams in the league, as some people will still say, and as some people still said after the loss to the Seahawks. You are a championship contender going out like this to a Falcons team barely scraping by to survive. And it got worse, because as Matthew Stafford would throw this second interception to the rookie in Xavier Watts, you want to know what proceeded to happen next as I'm tracking this. A 93-yard touchdown run by Bijan Robinson. A 93-yard touchdown run. Like this, you could not make that up. One of the better teams in the NFL, as some people believe, is now down at the half by 21 to the fucking Falcons. A Falcons team below 500 in a division that is legitimately struggling to find out who is trying to win it. It is crazy. Even worse for the flow of the game, because if the madness wasn't already fucked up enough, they would get the lead back out to 21 after a field goal from the Rams. And then, in a matter of 2 possessions, they would single-handedly shorten this to a single touchdown, as they would proceed to get down the field, get Terrence Ferguson, the rookie from Oregon, fed for a 27-yard touchdown catch, and then proceeded to have the Falcons drive all the way down the field, come up short, potentially get a field goal to go up by at least at that point 17, and instead you go through a full 10-point swing as Jared Verse crashes in from the fucking rafters and gets himself a fucking 81-yard block kick return touchdown. What the fuck is going on with this game? This game's on crack. On crack. Instantly. Because, of course, the Falcons have to Falcon. Even better, the Falcons force another interception on Matthew Stafford after Pukinakua got a couple of receptions in this one, and he had been struggling a little bit all night long. They finally get that to work, and they still can't protect the football. Xavier Watts would get his second interception of the day, and he'd be called for unsportsmanlike conduct. Nigga, fuck that flag. But the Falcons at that point, I don't know what the hell happened. Like, literally, tail of two fucking halves, they could not do shit. They went 3 and out and then proceeded to have the Rams drive all the way down the field for an 89-yard touchdown drive, capped off fittingly by Pukinakua getting in the end zone for an 11-yard touchdown catch and tying up the ball game. I didn't even watch the game live, but I saw a thumbnail of it mentioning that the last time the Falcons had given up a 21-point lead that they had at halftime to lose a game was in Super Bowl 51. And at that point, every single motherfucking Falcons fan's heart dropped to the fucking floor. Did you really want to be reminded of that? More than 8 years later, on a random day in December? That is a terrible Christmas present, late Christmas present, to have to deal with. A chance to legitimately have yet another collapse of historical proportions to once again derail a season in the same decade's time span. They needed a drive to stave off those demons, exorcise them at that point. Genuinely. And you know what? When they had to have the drive, they got it done, despite not really doing much in the second half at all. Lean on Bijan Robinson, they did, and Tyler Allgeier for that matter. And they were able to force the Rams to utilize all their timeouts, grind the clock all the way down to 25 seconds left in the game. And Zane Gonzalez banged in a 51-yard field goal to give them the lead. Now at that point, the Rams, you couldn't put it past them to have a chance to go down and tie up the ball game. But they needed to move off their own side of the field first to be able to do it. And this catch I did end up seeing in post through like a different, clip. It did look initially like Pukinakua had gotten control of this. They ruled this an incomplete pass. So I guess they did not show me in that moment the, angle where they determined that, okay, this is an incomplete pass. I must not have seen that in full. But that still wouldn't be enough to really change the outcome of the drive. Because they would never be able to move off their own side of the field. They got stopped on 4th down at the same 35-yard line without Matthew Stafford even completing a single pass in that time span. And as a result, the fucking Falcons would finish what they started. Finally be able to, for at least one time, every so often, overcome that falconing mentality and win 27-24. Wow. With only 126 passing yards from Kirk Cousins. But at that point, he literally managed the game. He didn't do enough to go out there and win them the game, and he damn sure didn't even try to make them lose this shit. But it was all about Bijan Robinson in this game, who had 27 total touches for 229 total yards and a rushing touchdown of 93 yards, receiving touchdown as well. David Sills, the fifth, added 3 receptions for 37 yards as well. And again, credit to Xavier Watts, the rookie, for getting 5 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections on the night. The man was legitimately everywhere. As for the Rams, so Matthew Stafford coming into this game, his odds were still above those of Drake May, even without being a person that gambles all that much, but I'd seen that. And they'd shortened over the past, few days or so. Well, it's safe to say that Drake May has probably taken him over after a game like this. Now, Matthew Stafford is still in the conversation. This doesn't knock him out completely. But, man, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 57.9% completion for a man in Matthew Stafford who had been automatic for most of the season is just quite the fucking surprise, to say the least. And it is not something that the Rams needed to deal with at this point, as that effectively eliminated them from having a chance at 1, winning the NFC West, and 2, getting the 1 seed. Tough to have that happen in one fell swoop. But again, if you're going to play against the Falcons like that, especially in the first half, one could question a few things. Even though, again, with most of what we've seen from the Rams this season, they look the part. It's just like, why now? Why do you choose now to have something like that happen? I don't know. As a team, they ran for 115 yards on 5.8 yards per carry, with Kyron Williams leading it all with 92 on the ground. Xavier Smith had 4 receptions for 67 yards. Terrence Ferguson had 2 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. Colby Parkinson had 6 receptions for 53 yards. And I'll say that, hey, man, you also have to give tremendous credit to the Falcons for not allowing Puka Nacua to really get going all that much at all. For a man who set career highs in receiving yards and receptions in a game just last week, is on a fucking heater over the last few games. I'd already mentioned all of the historical significance that stat line had for him in the last recap, and they proceed to limit him to one of his worst outputs in the season. And at that point, yes, you could afford to have Xavier Smith and Terrence Ferguson and Colby Parkinson go off, but with Devontae Adams being out right now, and I'm sure they're trying to conserve him for the playoff, this offense is going to run through what Puka Nacua can provide. And the fact that the Falcons were able to bottle him up like that, like, damn. Jeez. Craziness, man. Divine Diablo for the Falcons also had 10 tackles in a game that, again, with everything in mind, keeps them alive as long as they win next week and as long as they get a Bucks win and a Panthers loss. But of course, you could leave it up to them to potentially tie each other. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.